take a look at what happened.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. Welcome to the show. It is Monday morning. This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Would have quite happily carried on that heated debate with my good colleague Mike Graham for quite a long time, but no doubt be carrying on that debate with you. So much to talk about since I was last in air on Thursday. I couldn't believe, that it was the Starmer press conference in the Oval Office with Donald Trump was remarkable enough. Then Friday's press conference, just the exchange. They didn't even get to the press conference. It was thrown out before lunch between Zelensky and Trump and J.D. Vance was the most extraordinary thing I've ever seen in the political diplomatic way. But we're going to be talking about all of that throughout the show. My goodness, I would love to get your thoughts on all of it. We might just do a whole hour, just me and Mike battling this out at some point. It really needs to be done. But whether you are listening on a DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device, it is fabulous to have your company today. Now, coming up in this hour, obviously, going to be focusing on what is going on with Ukraine. Keir Starmer said Europe stands at a crossroads in history. He's urged other world leaders at that summit in London yesterday to commit to joining a coalition of the willing to end the war in Ukraine. This comes after that Trump-Zelensky, should we say, heated exchange in the Oval Office. The Ukrainian president said he is still ready to sign a minerals deal with the US, but there need to be security guarantees, otherwise it's not worth the paper it's printed on. And he confirmed that he is prepared to step down as president in exchange for Ukraine's membership of NATO. Meanwhile, Keir Starmer has dismissed calls to cancel the offer of a state visit to President Trump after his outburst. Meanwhile, the COVID inquiry, that's back in the news. It's going to start 4 weeks of hearings today, looking into the purchase and distribution of billions of pounds worth of PPE during the pandemic, in particular those VIP lanes where pretty much every single thing that was bought we paid massively over the odds for, and about half of it was completely and utterly useless and unsafe. How on earth did that happen? Didn't, by the way, happen in any other country. So what was peculiarly wrong here? We'll talk about all of that. I'd love to hear your thoughts in particular, well, on everything we're talking about, but in particular after that heated exchange between Trump and Zelensky and indeed Vance in the Oval Office on Friday. What should Keir Starmer do to help Ukraine? Should there be this coalition of the willing? Should there be European massive defence spending increase so they can actually provide a security guarantee to Ukraine? NATO membership? Should we just say, hey, take the deal, take the mineral deal, cede a load of your territory and just keep your fingers crossed, Zelensky, and let's hope that Putin, despite being proven utterly untrustworthy in his entire career in Russia, is this time telling the truth and that he would actually agree to a deal. Whose side are you on, effectively, Trump or Zelensky's? I mean, Trump says it's peace or war. Isn't it the other way round? Isn't it the other way round? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Well, if you were Keir Starmer, what would you do right now to help Ukraine? What do you think the right outcome should be? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk and your message to 87222. You can get in touch at talkTV on X. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1 standard network rate message. You can leave a message for free on YouTube as well. So much to talk about. Can't wait to get your calls on this. Sam Armstrong is joining me, commentator Sam Armstrong. First, I was going to apologise to you for giving you yet another cold and cough, which I seem to have acquired over the weekend. So hoping my voice lasts. I'm going to go a bit Mariella Frostrup as we go through the show, but hoping I don't pass it on to you because you've got a day job as well. But Sam Armstrong, I mean, what should Keir Starmer do to help Ukraine?
Well, the Prime Minister is undoubtedly in a difficult position here, and I don't say that easily. He's not my best friend on earth, but the cards he has been dealt are now very, very, very difficult indeed. The scenes I saw last week in the Oval Office were, whatever you think about it, right? Just put aside whatever your opinion
Whatever your
was.
political views are, yeah.
They were extraordinary. They were, as Donald Trump himself said, at the very least, it was very good television, right? And it's going to have enormous consequences. What happened in that tiny room there is going to ring out right across the world. So, hence far, I haven't said this once yet during his premiership, but so far, credit to the guy, Keir Starmer is doing exactly what I would do. He's handling it very well, and kudos to him as he does so. Yeah,
that's kind of my view. I thought he did what he had to do on Thursday. A bit of, basically, licking of bottom parts to Donald Trump, the offering of that state visit. Unprecedented, it's never happened before. All of that stuff. He did what he had to do beforehand. You don't want to throw away that, again, frankly, sod a trade deal. Right now, we are not... I just don't think most people who are saying, oh, Trump's right, he's doing the right thing, I don't think they've really got to grips with the reality of what is really happening in Eastern Europe. I don't think they get it. This war over there that doesn't really matter, nothing to do with us not sending our troops to die, etc., etc. Yeah, I can understand a lot of that. Apart from the fact these things have a habit of becoming our problem. And actually, if we acted in 2014 or before 2014, if we acted before 2022 in February with that invasion, I don't think any of this would happen if we'd given more arms sooner, more help sooner. We could have had this over. The economic impact of Ukraine on our country has been far huger than the military cost of having provided the help we needed. I think this is an absolute game changer, a total game changer for defence policy in Europe. One thing that Donald Trump has done that I do approve of on this front, and as you know, I've been accused of Trump derangement syndrome over the years, not a fan of his in 2016. Glad he lost in 2020, and he did lose in 2020. But this time round, if I was American, I would have voted for him. I'm loving what he's doing on net zero. I'm loving what he's doing on Doge. I'm loving what he's doing on DI. I'm loving what he's doing on Israel. But I said before the election, my big worry was I thought he was completely wrong on Ukraine. I think he's totally beholden to Vladimir Putin. I don't know why. Is there compromise on him? Does he genuinely believe that he uniquely has this relationship of trust with Vladimir Putin? No one has a relationship of trust with Vladimir Putin. He's a psychopath. He does not have those relationships. Everything is transactional for that man. I think he's using Donald Trump, who in this case is genuinely one of the useful idiots of the West, believing that you can trust Putin's word. And I mean, it's laughable. I don't believe for a moment that J.D. Vance is a very educated, very intelligent man. I don't believe for a moment that he believes Trump is trustworthy. I don't believe for a moment that Secretary of State Marco Rubio believes that that Vladimir Putin is trustworthy. But Donald Trump does, and everyone's going to play along. But the reality is for the Ukrainians, when they're told by Donald Trump, don't you want peace? I want peace. You think they don't want peace? I mean, Zelensky couldn't have made it clearer. Hey, give us NATO membership. That will guarantee security. He thinks, I don't know if the Estonians, Latvians and Lithuanians feel so sure about that right now. But, you know, he said, I'll give up the presidency in return for the NATO membership. He said that again and again. I don't know what bigger proof there is that this is not about Zelensky's ego. It's about saving his country.
Yeah, just think for a minute the history, the story of Volodymyr Zelensky. He gets elected a year before his entire country is invaded. And he had been warning for some while that this is going on.
No, he was 2019, wasn't he?
2019, forgive me. So 2 years before his country had been invaded. He'd been warning throughout that time that this invasion was coming and had been told consistently, you are crying wolf, you are over-egging the pudding, stop doing it. You've got this small issue down in the southeast of the country, we'll help you with that, but this isn't going to happen. And then, when Russia was sabre-rattling, there were bright sparks right across the capitals of Europe and America, including those right now that are still sitting around in Europe, still calling the shots, that are now claiming they're so high and mighty, that said, oh no, you can't listen to what Vladimir Putin says. He's over-egging it. He's just sabre-rattling for his domestic audience. But no, his country was invaded so thoroughly that a column of Russian tanks got within 60 kilometres of the Ukrainian capital, and they were coming for him. They were coming to kill him. And the Americans back then, Joe Biden, who everyone was saying, oh, he talked tough, but he didn't do it. The Trumpers are saying that. His response was, contrary to what the Democrats are saying now, so cowardly that he offered to send a helicopter. Yeah. And what did Zelensky say? He says, forget a helicopter. What I want is guns. I
don't need a ride. I need guns.
This is a guy who put his life literally in danger. There have been numerous attempts to kill this guy by the Russians, and he has stayed in the midst of battle. People objecting to the fact he's dressed for battle. That is a man who stood there while everybody around him,
He doesn't wear a suit because it's not business as usual.
While American diplomats, while British diplomats ran, he stayed. So I don't want to hear it that this isn't a great guy. Now look, none of that is
doesn't mean he's perfect.
Yeah.
Panama Papers, that doesn't mean he's perfect. No one's claiming that. Neither was Winston Churchill.
Yeah, believe you me. But he is a guy that history has chosen, and he has risen to the occasion. Yeah. And we need to come up with a deal, but let's get out of our heads this idiotic notion. I've seen conspiracy theory after conspiracy theory going around on the internet. Oh, that he was high on cocaine. Just nonsense.
Yeah. But also, he's a puppet. It's just abject nonsense.
It is ridiculous stuff, and it is obvious where it is all getting pushed from, which is a highly dangerous, highly sophisticated regime that we know, because it is literally run by a guy who was in the KGB, is more than prepared to run influence-style operations right across the Western world, because the guy who's literally the president of the country got his break having done so.
Yeah, I mean, the troll farms have been, full blast. They really have, and it's amazing to me how many, again, useful idiots in the West. And I'm sorry, I'm going to include some of my colleagues here at Talk in that. Now, I love that we can all have different views. No one is telling us what to say. We give our own views. But genuinely, a lot of people, their justification, they are basically spouting Kremlin talking points. I know you're going to have a go at me for that. Feel free to. I will take on all comers. 0344 499 1000. Let's play a couple of the little clips, very short little clips, just a reminder. Because I was late for a friend's birthday on Friday night, saying I'm sorry, I couldn't tear myself away from the TV. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, the exchange between Trump and Zelensky, and also J.D. Vance Zelensky. Let's have a little watch and listen to the key moment with Donald Trump.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. Right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
I think the most telling point there is when Zelensky says, I'm not playing cards. It's not a game. And Donald Trump, his whole thing is, it was notable to me, the point at which he got angry in that. And yes, I've watched the whole thing. God, really, I do this for a living, guys. The point at which he got angry was actually when Zelensky was saying, why, basically, paraphrasing, why do you trust Vladimir Putin? Because we did a deal. We've done the deal before. We did it after 2014. We did the deal. And then he came again. That's what he's going to do next time. Why do you trust him? And it was almost like defending the honour of his big mate Putin. It was almost like he'd insulted Melania and he was defending her honour. It was quite the most bizarre thing. But then, J.D. Vance coming in for the kill. Again, this was I thought this was just embarrassing. And J.D. Vance is a very clever guy, and I have to say, I thought this was embarrassing. But this is what J.D. Vance had to say. OK, we can't get that one, but it's like, have you said thank you? We know that clip. He's saying, like, have you said thank you? Have you ever said, I mean, he'd actually said thank you earlier, and I think 7 minutes in he'd said thank you. But he's also said thank you, I mean, so many times. And then we had Marjorie Taylor Greene's husband, who's claiming to be a journalist of some sort, who then sort of has a go at him, why aren't you wearing a suit? Again, Winston Churchill went to the Oval Office not wearing a suit. I mean, people were talking, I mean, last week I remember, people saying, oh, he's flying around the world, why is he not at home, he's a wartime leader. Again, Winston Churchill did exactly the same, because he's trying to get support to save his people's life. It was when he showed the photographs early on of the children who'd been abducted. And I just find it... I just find it so bewildering that people don't get that. What is the answer, though? Because we're told the coalitions are willing. We're told that Starmer's going to try and play this role between the two. And he's spoken to both Trump and to Zelensky. We saw the clear show of support. We've had the tweets, we've had the arms round, we had the trip to visit the King. Bearing in mind, Trump has been offered the state visit, so, but there's Zelensky with the King. All these world leaders turning up, and Trudeau, and showing all that. Now, that's all very well at the end of the day. If you ain't got the weapons and you ain't got the money, now there is money, lots of people upset. Rachel Reeves suddenly found some money from this fund to help Ukraine. Is this an investment? This is an investment, as far as I'm concerned, in saving us money in the future, at the end of the day. But do you think that basically Europe now needs to step up?
Yeah, and look, let's be really clear. I think actually Keir Starmer has handled this quite well. But if he hadn't been going on to Washington on Thursday with such a begging bowl in the first place, without needing the Americans to sign off his ridiculous, preposterous Chagos deal, without begging for any kind of trade accommodation while he's jumping in bed with the Europeans on their dangerous trade practices, if he hadn't been doing that, he would have been going with a much stronger hand, and we'd be in a much better position right now. But look, in Europe, across the board, we have been tardy on our bills. We have been failing to maintain the standards we should have. And look, we can't make in a year the level of ammunition that Russia makes in a month. Right? You want to know what the problem is? It's that Russian artillery systems can just pound and pound and pound and pound Ukrainian lines all day long, while the Ukrainians can't fire back because we simply have neglected our basic defence base for too long. Now, Keir Starmer last week announced that sort of we're getting up to 2.5% by 2027, but also but only by including this and that and pension payments and what we're paying to the security services.
We need to double our security spending.
The simple way to deal with that is a straightforward position, which we should have taken years ago, which is to slash money from the welfare state, which has grown completely and utterly out of control. Over 1 million extra people now on long-term out-of-work benefits because of quote-unquote mental health that would be better off in the workplace. If we hadn't been so naive, they wouldn't have been allowed to get themselves into this sick position in the first place. We need to take all of that money, we need to reinvest it where it should have been in the first place, which is recognising, because of our gross naivety and our gross just, this is all great after the Cold War and pretending everything was fine.
The end of history. The
end of history. It was the most naive, abject failure of Western politicians ever, full stop, ever. We now need to recognise that we are paying down for that stupidity that we've engaged in many years, and we need to start investing 4-5% of our national income in defence. And I mean defence, I mean security. We're going to have to drop the foreign aid stuff even further.
Well, we're going to have to drop net zero. I wrote a column in The Sun on Friday. Net zero is the biggest issue. You don't have a manufacturing base if you don't have cheaper and abundant energy. You definitely can't manufacture steel and ships and guns and artillery.
But net zero is just emblematic of the whole thing, because it is another icon of just the gross, naive stupidity. It was premised on the belief that all of these countries around the world that frankly don't share our values, China, Russia, Brazil, India to some extent, were going to comply with all of this.
Yeah.
So was America. What we have just had a wake-up call. We could all go back in Europe to being Celts that sing round fires, that picks at throwing spears
That's what the Greens
people.
want us to do.
And the world is still going to get warmer. It doesn't work anymore. It's got to go. All of that nonsense is out of the door. It's got to finish. We need to wake up and realise that wonderful world that we were promised, this Belle Epoque, this era of peace, it's gone, it's finished, it's over, it's history. If we want to survive in this modern world, we're going to have to get tough. It starts with doing the right thing now, drawing a line in the sand saying, no, you don't get to invade European countries, but it means making some big, difficult decisions. Keir Starmer does that, he'll go down in history as one of the great prime ministers of this time.
I mean, you and I are no fans of Keir Starmer. Right now he's on the right track. I don't necessarily trust that he's got the steel in his belly. But again, this is not about people being hawks and wanting to go to war. This is about preventing war. This is about stopping war. But you do that by being able and willing to fight a war. That is how it works. Again, I always say to people, compare this to 1939. No, Putin isn't Hitler in lots of ways. I mean, he is very, very similar in terms of his aims. But at the end of the day, you want peace. On what terms? Tell me on what terms. I want to hear from you. 0344 499 1000. Don't know, I'm even reading out the number. We've already got a full board. I'd love to hear more of your calls, so keep on calling. We will get as many calls as we can on throughout the show. Loads and loads of top guests coming on the show throughout, but we want to hear from you first and foremost. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
Netanyahu does have a massive problem with right-wing Israeli Zionist zealots.
Excuse me, did you just call someone who wants a two-state solution a Zionist? Are you mad?
No.
Benjamin Netanyahu is defending his people. How dare you,
I'm not calling Benjamin Netanyahu. I'm saying he's
calling him a Zionist.
You're not listening to me. No, you're not listening to me.
Two-state solution.
No, you're not listening to me. He's got some rabid right-wingers who are extremists in the same mould as Hamas.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer, and Sam Armstrong, whose voice is more likely to last the show than mine is. Let's get straight to your phone calls, 0344 499 1000. By the way, haven't got to anything else yet, have we? Gaza, BBC documentaries, the COVID inquiry, PPE, skinny Ozempic stars at the Oscars, and basically barely dressed women in their underwear at the Brits. We'll talk about all that later, though. Seriously, girls, have a meal, have some food. Seriously, have a cheese sandwich and put some clothes on. Just have a cheese sandwich and put some clothes on. You're just embarrassing yourselves now. That's my thought on that. We'll come to that. Apparently there were some films and some music that won awards as well, but who knew? Anyway, let's get back to your calls, 0344 499 1000, about Trump and Zelensky. The question I'm asking really is, what should Keir Starmer do to help Ukraine? We put it out on social media on X. Most responses seem to be resign. I'm not sure that's a helpful, constructive response, guys. But let's get what the phone calls say. Simon is in Northamptonshire. Hello, Simon.
Good morning,
Good
Julia.
morning.
I hope you're feeling as well as you can be with that.
Oh, I don't do the man flu thing. I just want my voice to survive. What do you want to say, my love?
Yeah, I'm a little bit torn on it because I think I watched the interaction, whatever you want to call it, and I was horrified. My stepmother's American, and her exact words were, said, I'm embarrassed to be an American right at this point, because I think the way it was handled, the way it was televised, it was embarrassing to watch, because I think it would just embolden Putin.
Lots of Americans were cheering Donald Trump on. If you look at social media, he won that one.
I think the problem with that is it's where people support a person. Yeah. It's not about what has actually happened. It's just like, well, this was our guy. We support him irrespective. Yeah. That's the polarisation issue. Yeah. However, someone put it to me, and I thought, actually, this is a very valid point. It's left me torn on it. If we go down into NATO membership, and I'm not saying Donald Trump has recognised this, so that's his motivation for it, but that just nudges us all the more closer to World War III, because once something happens between Russia and Ukraine, and if they're a NATO member, we all have to pile in.
Well, hold on a minute. Isn't the whole point of NATO membership is that he won't invade a NATO member because he knows that would, well, again, knows, thinks, suspects. I'm no longer sure that NATO membership is worth the paper it's printed on. I no longer trust the Americans would come in, and a number of the other countries in Europe would come in and actually do, all for one and one for all under under Article 5.
And I think that's the fear, that Putin knows that to some degree, because he has always said he doesn't want NATO on his border. Yeah. That would give him an excuse to say, well, I'm not invading NATO. I was already at war with this country. You've brought them in. Whatever way you want to spin it, bring them into NATO. I'm not saying we shouldn't be doing it, but it will just nudge us close to World War III. You've then got China, Iran, all of those would have to pick sides.
Oh, they've already picked sides. I mean,
of course,
but this is my thing. What is the leader of the free world? What is the American president, Donald Trump? And by the way, people accusing me of Trump derangement syndrome. I've backed him on Israel, on DI, on net zero, on Doge. I mean, I've been really supportive of stuff he's done since he's come into office. In no way am I just like anti-Trump on that way. On this, I always knew it was going to be a problem. I'd hoped he would see sense and it was just an electioneering thing. But actually, when it came to realpolitik, he would understand the plight of Ukraine. But he was voting with Russia and Iran and China, was it twice at the UN last week? I mean, I'm sorry, that's appalling.
Yeah, and I think this is the problem. A lot of people are now seeing this of like, it is possible to say I've supported him on other issues, but say, no, this I just cannot agree with you on. However, the end result is, if it's avoiding us going into World War III, that's a positive outcome, and that could be how he's viewed many years in the future. But I don't think that's his motivation. I don't think he's going in there going, I'm going to be the world's peacekeeper. As someone else has said, he's transactional. He wants something back from this. If he can't get it, yes, it might secure us peace, but the way he's going about it, Putin is just going to be rubbing his hands together going, do you know what, I can get the best deal possible.
But why do you think not giving a security guarantee to Ukraine secures peace? This is the bit I don't get. We know, as Zelensky, the point at which Trump got annoyed with Zelensky was when he pointed out the facts that we did a peace deal with Trump. We did a ceasefire deal. He's reneged on every aspect of that deal after he invaded Crimea. We know he's not trustworthy.
Yeah, and I think this is the whole problem. The only way I can see this would get solved, and no one wants it, like with, if you go back to World War II, it took a war to take out someone who's a mad dictator. it might be where this needs to go, but that's not an appetising or pleasant decision anyone wants to consider going, let's go to war to get rid of him.
No, but again, for me, if we'd been able and willing to go to war in 2014 or in 2022 and Vladimir Putin knew that and he was sure of that NATO alliance, then I don't think he would ever have invaded. I don't think he's not a stupid man. One thing we can say about Putin, he is not a stupid man. He's very, very cunning. He thinks he can get away with it. Why does he get away with it? Because he keeps getting away with it. He got away with murdering someone, an attempt to murder people on the streets of London. Oh, we expelled a few diplomats. I mean, I'm sorry, that was an act of war in itself. He gets away with it every time. I mean, I'd also, there's a big element with it, with his entire economy now is basically based on the military. It's based on the war effort. I don't think he can undo that war effort now because his economy collapses and his power will collapse. So I think he's hell-bent on this. But, we can ignore the realities as long as we want, I think, Simon. But I don't think he's going to ignore them. Simon, I so appreciate your call. Let's go to Robert in Hertfordshire. Hi, Robert.
Good morning.
Morning.
Just before I go on to my point, going back to skinny Hollywood actresses, what's happened to that Ariana Grande?
Grande, yeah.
Oh, my God. I'll tell you what, as my dad used to say, I've seen more fat on a butcher's pencil.
I think it's just sad. They all just get, but again, it's the world, it's that world they're in. But let's talk about more important things, though. Let's talk about what's going on in Ukraine.
Well, a wise man once said to me years ago, in any negotiation, one side has to offer a bit more and one side has to accept a bit less. Now, when you think about it, that's quite true. There's a lot of sense in that. I didn't agree with you when you said that Starmer's on the right track. No, he's not. He's showboating. No, he's not. He's showboating. And I would go to prison rather than let my grandsons fight a fight for this country. I would go to prison.
Fight for this country or fight for Ukraine?
No, well, go over to Ukraine.
That's different. Fighting for Ukraine. Would you not fight for this country? I would.
I would, but I'd get in the queue. I'd say, right, OK, I'll fight, but I want to see a few asylum seekers with me, shoulder to shoulder. No,
yeah. Well, we've got an awful lot of young males of fighting age. Let's put them in the army. There's an argument for that, isn't it? But you're saying you wouldn't want if you've got, particularly if you've got sons, would you want them fighting? Now, we're not looking at conscription. We're not looking at people fighting in Ukraine. Zelensky said that from word go. We don't need you to spill any blood. We just need your weapons, we need your arms. We're talking about a peacekeeping force after a ceasefire.
Well, this country has got someone. I was listening to a discussion last week. We've got the smallest army since the Napoleonic Wars. Yeah. The smallest armies. I mean, that's pretty
Well, we need
scary.
to have a bigger army, yeah.
I watched 3 films in the last 2 weeks. One was Elizabeth, the Golden Age. I know it was an Australian actress. One was The King, and then over the weekend, Darkest Hour.
I watched The Darkest Hour on Saturday night.
What has happened to it? When you think of... See, we've already got the enemy here. The enemy is already here. Now, during the war, we didn't have that. OK, we had a few Nazi sympathisers, but they were soon dealt with. But we've actually got the enemy is here.
Yeah, but a lot of that is deliberate. That is work by Putin, by China, to undermine us from within, and we've allowed it to happen. It's insane. Look, time is against us, Robert. I'm going to have to go, but I so appreciate your call. Thank you very much indeed. We're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be hearing from the chairman of Republicans Overseas UK, Greg Spencer. He's very much defending Donald Trump. Interesting, though, he was not a Trump fan, as you'll remember, head of the Republican primaries. But I'd love to hear what he makes of where we go right now, and what does he think that Keir Starmer should do to help Ukraine. Do give us a call to have your say. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. This is Talk.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 10:35 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Sam Armstrong is still with me. Just before we go to our next guest, time now to find out if you could be in with a chance of winning £25,000.
Time's running out to get involved in our 25 grand competition. Here at Talk, we're giving you the chance to win this life-changing amount of money for 2025. So what do you need to do to get involved? All you have to do is text the word prize to 83338, or you can enter by post. It's as simple as that, but time is running out. Once again, to get involved, just text the word prize to 83338, or you can enter by post.
18 plus, UK excluding NI. Enter by SMS for £2 plus one standard network charge by 11 p.m. on March the 3rd, 2025. Or send your name, email and contact number to £25,000 cash competition, PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP, to arrive by 5 p.m. on March the 6th, 2025. This is a News Broadcasting Network promotion. Full terms and conditions at talksport.com.
Well, good luck, everybody. Today is the last day of the competition. You've got a bit of time to get those applications in by post, but lines close at 11 o'clock tonight. So very, very good luck. Right, let's get straight to my next guest, Greg Swenson. He's chairman of Republicans Overseas UK and joins us to talk about, well, you know, that meeting in the Oval Office, that big summit yesterday, and what happens next when it comes to Ukraine. Very good morning to you, Greg.
Good morning, Julia. Great to be here.
Thanks for joining us. Just first of all, what did you make of the Oval Office exchanges, not just between Donald Trump and Zelensky, but also J.D. Vance and Zelensky?
I thought that, generally speaking, everything was great for 40 minutes. And then in the last 10 minutes, it really blew up. I thought, look, you have to expect a little bit more theater, a little bit more drama from this president. He's not a politician. He's not a trained
He is a
diplomat.
Politician. Everyone's got to stop saying he's not a politician. Okay. He's a politician.
Okay, Julia, okay. Well, how about I reword it for you then? He was not a politician until 8 years ago. Okay, so he's not a lifer politician like a lot of the people in Western Europe who go to university. I'm getting to that. And so I'm not excusing anything. I think it's refreshing. I think it's fantastic that this president is a little different and is a little unfiltered. However, every once in a while with that, you get a little bit of fireworks. However, but Zelensky was out of order. Zelensky had a lot of missteps, a missed opportunity. I thought he was arrogant. I thought he kept poking the bear. It was a mistake. And especially in contrast to the way the prime minister and the president of France, with Macron in on Monday and Keir Starmer in on Thursday. In contrast, Zelensky was a loose cannon.
Well, exactly. The thing is about Macron and Starmer, if they're not being asked to give up 20% of their country, so is it slightly less at stake for them than there is for Zelensky? It was very clear to me, as you said, it went very well for quite a long time. But the point at which it started going wrong, when Donald Trump got angry, was when Zelensky questioned why he thought that basically Putin was trustworthy, given that he said, you should want peace, you should have peace. Well, yeah, we did do peace. We did a deal. We did a deal after the 2014 invasion of Crimea. And Vladimir Putin has reneged on every aspect of that deal. It was when he actually presented Donald Trump with facts, as opposed to some nonsense that he's seen on Twitter or X, a Kremlin talking point, that Donald Trump got angry. Would you say it was refreshing and fantastic? He totally humiliated a wartime leader. He's called him a dictator. He won't use that word about Vladimir Putin, who is literally a dictator who kills his opposition leaders. I mean, I thought Donald Trump was embarrassing. And I thought it was genuine. I mean, it was an embarrassment to your nation. And you know, I've been very supportive of lots of the things that he's done.
Absolutely.
So this isn't TDS. This isn't Trump derangement syndrome. I thought he was ignorant. I thought he was a Putin's useful idiot. He's either being paid by Putin or there's some other compromise on him, because nothing else explains that attitude that Putin is a man he can do business with. No one can do business with Putin. He's a psychopath.
I think I can explain. I distrust Putin. We all distrust Putin, and I'm quite sure
Trump says he trusts him.
Well, right now he's saying that as part of the process to get him to the table. This is why Peter Mandelson, who has always been quite the critic of President Trump, the UK ambassador to the US, said on the Sunday shows yesterday, take the deal. This is the only one. And so
it's not a deal,
Julia.
But it's not a deal. Zelensky said it. Zelensky's made it clear he needs to have a security. Giving away mineral rights doesn't provide any security. That's not a deal.
Getting investment into the country that gets the United States more involved in the country is a smart thing to do. And
but
so that's
no
why Mandelson thinks it's smart. That might come, but that's not something they want to talk about.
But I'm saying it's not a deal. It's not a deal without security guarantee.
Why the president?
Oh, Greg, sorry. The line's a bit bad. Can we try and reconnect with him?
It very well could be a deal. Oh. I get it. Right.
No, sorry, Greg. I think we've got you back. Sorry, you kind of went a bit robotic for a minute. We've got you back. Carry on.
Yeah. All right, that's my new look. So I think, look, this is all a process, right? So we've got it. The most important thing is getting Putin to the table. It might not be polite. It might not be palatable. We all dislike him. We all dislike the fact that he invaded Ukraine.
Donald Trump doesn't dislike him.
Oh, yeah. Yes, he does. Absolutely. But he doesn't think it's productive right now to be name calling. And this is from the guy who's great.
But he name called Zelensky.
Julia, just give me I was just getting to that. Okay. So give me a chance to finish. So look, he doesn't think it's productive to call out Putin right now because there's a great risk. And listen to Marco Rubio, who I thought was pretty good yesterday. Listen to the Secretary of State. There is a great risk that this doesn't amount to anything. Okay. If Putin doesn't come to the table, then this is a failure. But we think it's worth trying. So the last thing we want to do right now is antagonize Putin and force him away from, or basically convince him not to come to the table. If we start calling him names, if we start abusing him, which he deserves, don't get me wrong, but this is not virtue.
But he doesn't need. No, he doesn't need to be abused.
Day,
I don't need Donald Trump to be calling him names. I don't think he should be calling anybody names. I just think he should just be. If he wants to be an honest broker between the two, that's fine.
Look,
but if without a security guarantee, saying I want a load of money, he spouts abject nonsense and lies about how much aid America has given vis-a-vis
He likes
Europe.
to use. He likes hyperbole.
Greg. No. There's hyperbole and there's outright lies.
How about this? We go back to the model prior to Trump taking office on January 21st. Who's going to beat the Russians right now? Germany? I don't think the UK could.
The Americans could tomorrow if they wanted to.
Of course we could, but there's no appetite for boots on the ground in a foreign war. And so all this virtue signaling for 3 years, I'm behind Ukraine. Yeah, we all love Ukraine. We really do. But nobody's willing to fight for them. And even the security
Ukraine
guarantee,
said they don't need people to fight for them. They need the weaponry so they can fight themselves.
Exactly. And so they've been drip-fed weaponry for 3 years to continue the stalemate. I don't understand that. I wish that we, the U.S. and the West, had actually given them what they needed 3 years ago.
Yep.
But we can't turn back the clock. That was then and this is now.
Well, we could do it now.
Biden wanted a stalemate. Yeah, I mean, I don't know that there's appetite for that though now because it's a different situation. So.
No, what's the different situation? I don't understand what people think has changed.
I can tell you that what's different is the popularity of Zelensky, which is important, right? The popularity was sky high in February of 22. That's when you have to go in with full-on support. He had the ratings, he had support not only in his own country but globally. And now you have a point where 3 years of stalemate. We think it's best to end this thing.
You're talking about polls in Ukraine. He's still the most popular political figure in Ukraine.
So you want to?
There was a poll last week.
I don't know that I would believe the polls out of Ukraine.
So wait a minute. Okay. You believe the polls if he's unpopular, but you don't believe the polls if he's popular. That's irrelevant. He's the democratically elected leader of a state.
Julia, I did not say that. Please don't put words in my mouth. I said he doesn't enjoy the popularity now that he did then, both globally and at home.
Winston Churchill lost the first election after the Second World War. What is your point?
That's right. That's right.
So we should have got rid of Winston Churchill then?
Appetite for supporting. So no, not at all. I didn't bring Winston Churchill up at all, Julia. I don't know where you're getting that, but I'm just trying to tell you what the argument is right now. And what has been done for 3 years in Ukraine has failed. And so we're trying something different.
It hasn't failed because Russia thought they would seize the whole of Ukraine and they'd take it within 3 days. And they didn't. They've got 3 years on. They have lost far more men, far more equipment than Ukraine. And they have only taken 20% of the country. And in fact, about half of that they already had from 2014. The idea that they have failed in their defence of their country is an abject nonsense.
No, I think that both sides would like to argue, would like to be the winner. And right now there is no winner. So, and so right now there is no winner. There's no end in sight. It just becomes another year. I heard a lot of proponents over the weekend arguing, hey, let's try it for another year. I think Russia's weakening. Remember, Putin doesn't care about his own countrymen dying. He'll even wave in some North Koreans for cannon fodder. So, this is not an outcome that anybody wishes for. There's really no great outcome. And again, that's why the ambassador, Peter Mandelson, yesterday was saying, take the deal that's on the table. This is the only.
Yeah,
right
by
now,
all accounts, he wasn't speaking with the authority of the Prime Minister's office and was
that's true.
going a bit rogue.
The Prime Minister. I thought the Prime Minister did a great job.
What about if we have the Europeans? What if the European countries step up, start spending, carry on supporting, even if America walks away, carry on supporting Zelensky? What do you make of that?
I think it would be great if the Europeans did that. This is one of the outcomes that I think the president is striving for, is that the Europeans doing more to defend not only Ukraine in this situation, but defend themselves. And so I think that's a great outcome. If they finally do it, if that meeting yesterday is the moment where finally the Europeans decide to take their defense and security seriously, then great. By the way, I don't include the UK in there. The UK has maybe it's not adequate. I don't think U.S. defense spending is adequate either. But the U.S. and the UK are for the most part, the real leaders here. And the big economies of Europe are complete failures in terms of defense and security.
I mean, Italy and others are absolutely, and Germany, disgraceful. I have to say, but we're nowhere near where we need to be. Greg Swenson, thank you so much. Thank you for persevering through some of those that connection problem. Chairman of Republicans Overseas UK, Greg Swenson, thank you for that. Sam Armstrong, it's amazing how many people are sort of kind of taking this line from Donald Trump and this whole this whole defence of Donald Trump constantly. Well, he doesn't really mean what he says. Well, you know what? Words do matter.
Do you know what? I've gone through the last 5 years when it was the other side saying, actually, call a spade a spade.
Yeah.
Biden should stand up and show some strength. And do you know what? I'm going to hold Donald Trump to exactly the same standard I've held all of my political opponents. He's a guy I agree with. I mean, I thought J.D. Vance is somebody I like.
Yeah, I really admire him. I was disgusted by his behaviour on Friday. I
have watched J.D. Vance's kids for him. I've spent
that's a whole new development.
I've spent time with his wife. I think he's a great guy. I think he's going to play a big role in the future of conservatism around the world. But his conduct in the Oval Office was wrong. It was wrong. Now, that's not to say that he can never do anything good ever again, but it was wrong. And people have accused you, I'm sure they'll accuse me, of Trump derangement syndrome. But that goes both ways, right? That means that don't hold him to a higher standard than you hold everyone else. Judge him on his results. But yes, when he's acting out of line, when he's getting stuff wrong, I'm going to call him out.
Don't hold him to a lower standard, indeed. 10:49 is the time. Still want to hear your calls, 0344 499 1000. Up next, I'm going to talk about the COVID inquiry. Then did a new model. This is all about the PPE procurement process, those VIP lanes, and why we ended up with a whole load of PPE that didn't work and cost an absolute fortune. Didn't happen in other countries, so what went wrong? We'll talk about that up next. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good morning to you. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Let's talk about the COVID inquiry. An absolute whitewash and waste of space most of the time. I think we can safely say failure to call key witnesses, to look at the key issues, and just thinking we should have locked down sooner is the answer to the COVID inquiry. However, they're getting some interesting stuff right now. They've started a whole 4 weeks of hearings today, looking into the purchase and distribution of billions of pounds worth of medical equipment. You know it as well, I know it as PPE, those masks, those aprons, all of the protective equipment that health workers and others needed during the COVID pandemic, and basically just how much we spent on it, how much was wasted and how little of it actually worked. Well, let's talk about this with Daniel Bruce. He's Chief Executive of Transparency International UK. A very good morning to you, Daniel.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. I mean, there's already a bit of an outcry over the fact that they're not actually calling to give evidence, any of the people who supplied a lot of this overpriced, unusable PPE. What did you make of that decision, first of all?
Well, I think most importantly, there has to be a mechanism somewhere for companies that fail to deliver on these enormous contracts to be held to account. And if that's not going to be through the inquiry, then it perhaps needs to be through the courts or through some other legal mechanism. And I know that the inquiry is cautious in not wanting to prejudice any of those separate investigations into individual contractors. But maybe just to sort of ground the scale of the challenge that we're talking about here, our final research on this, which we published towards the end of last year, looked at all £45 billion that the UK government spent on PPE. And
hold on a minute. Wasn't that on PPE, the test and trace, hospital supplies and the vaccine rollout?
I think that's 48 billion altogether.
So the rest of it cost 3 billion.
Most of it is PPE.
Right. Okay. Wow.
And of that, there's 5,000 contracts, and we found 135 contracts that had 3 or more red flags for possible corruption of public money. Doesn't sound a lot against the 5,000, but in spend, it's £15 billion. Wow. Many of those contractors were the classic things that you would hear about. Brand new companies, never supplied PPE before. They were politically connected. They were referred through the highly controversial VIP lane. And there's got to be accountability through the inquiry. Yeah. The decisions that were taken around that.
Yeah, and a lot of defence will be given. Well, you know, it was a pandemic, it was an emergency. We couldn't get the PPE. I mean, there was talk of, you know, American officials standing at airports in China, basically, or Malaysia, just going, right, where are you taking that shipment to? France? Right, we will give you an extra $50,000 just in cash right now to fly it to America. I mean, there was a lot of bidding going on. But we're not talking about deals that were just signed in the early weeks when everyone was in a blind panic. We're talking about stuff that was still being signed months and months later, and huge sums of money being given, as you say, to companies that had never produced any PPE or sourced any PPE ever in their lives. And an awful lot of the PPE they did buy wasn't even, usable.
It's really important that the inquiry challenges that narrative, because actually the evidence, as you say, over months and indeed years, just doesn't support the argument that the height of the emergency in those early weeks somehow made this justifiable. The UK was an absolute outlier compared to many of our peer countries. We couldn't find anything in the world that looked like the VIP lane that the UK government created.
Remind people what that was, because, my goodness, we talked about it a lot of the time, but remind people what that actually involved.
Well, briefly, the kind of normal framework supply chains for PPE quickly collapsed as the UK was trying to stock up at the beginning of the pandemic. And so the government's response was to set up this, first of all, a call to arms for basically going out to market and saying, tell us what you've got and how much you want for it. They got overwhelmed, and so they created this triage channel that allowed those offerers of PPE who were connected to ministers or senior officials or members of the House of Lords, all of them in the Conservative Party of government at the time, to have their offers fast-tracked. It didn't work. Two statistics, which are really important here. All of the PPE that was bought through that high-priority lane was 80% more expensive than PPE that was procured through other channels, and half of it was not fit for purpose. £1 billion had to be written off.
And are we talking about corruption by those MPs, by those ministers, by those who Tory party donors or whatever who passing? Because at the time we were told this was just a way of hey, I'm an MP for this local constituency and I've got a factory in my constituency and they say they can make PPE and I can call this for hotline and get them a contract quickly. We can save lives. That was how it was billed to us, wasn't it?
All international best practice around how you spend public money wisely does not allow you to put the politicians in charge of triaging procurement.
Funny that. Yes. But also the most basic checks on a company and the people who are directors and things like that. But I mean, stuff that cursory 10-minute checks we're not talking about 3 weeks of looking into their backgrounds. We're talking cursory checks weren't done.
No, and some of the worst examples we found in our research, there are some contracts that have got 8 or more of the 14 red flags that we tested. And maybe you've got a political donor who's just set up a brand new company who sells stuff at overinflated prices and then fails to deliver. Those things should have been caught by the system. And again, the UK is an outlier. It should have spotted these things.
And have we got any of that money back? And has anyone been prosecuted yet?
There's one criminal investigation ongoing.
Well done.
So I can't talk about that. There's various litigation behind the scenes that the Department of Health, through its lawyers, are trying to claw money back. It's a long-winded process, and I think it's in the public interest to try and conclude some of that as early as possible. Because another challenge here is that whilst that's going on, a lot of the unusable PPE is still sitting in warehouses and container units, and the public purse is paying for the storage of it.
Brilliant. We're paying for stuff that was no use, that we overpaid for, that we can't use ever. Absolutely. I mean, it's almost like having these people in charge doesn't work very well, does it? Daniel Bruce, I so appreciate you joining us. Great investigation that you've done, Chief Executive, Transparency International UK. It is quite bizarre. We're still paying for that. Again, that's 48 billion quid, or sorry, 45 billion quid of stuff that is absolutely wasted. Think what that could be spent on. I mean, God, we could give away way more military bases to Mauritians for that, couldn't we? Be a bargain. Anyway, this is Talk. We are the home of common sense. So much coming up. Do stay tuned.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube, on your connected device, fabulous to have your company. An awful lot of you getting in touch on the phone lines. What a surprise. We are talking, of course, about Trump and Zelensky, particularly that heated exchange on the Oval Office on Friday. But crucially, after that summit yesterday, world leaders and talk of Keir Starmer saying we are at the crossroads in history and saying that he wants a coalition of the willing to end the war in Ukraine. He's not talking about putting boots on the ground, fighting forces, talking about boots on the ground as a peacekeeping force after a ceasefire. But what terms should that ceasefire be? I want to know, what should Keir Starmer do to help Ukraine? What would you do if you were him right now? Love to hear your thoughts on that. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. You can text on 87222. Get in touch on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. And of course, it's free to message us on YouTube. Get to as many of those as we can. Get to as many of those calls as we can. Don't forget the Ukrainian president has said he is still ready to sign a minerals deal with the US. But he confirmed that he is prepared to step down also as president in exchange for Ukraine's membership of NATO. So we all want peace. The idea that the president of Ukraine doesn't want peace for his country is insane. But peace on what terms and how long would it last? That is the crucial argument. So virtue signalling, going, oh, you want war, I want peace, is meaningless. It's just nonsense. I mean, we're not 13-year-olds. Let's have a proper conversation. Also, we're going to be talking to entertainment journalist, the brilliant Caroline Frost, about what happened at the Oscars overnight, as well as the Brits this weekend. And basically, a load of women who ain't eating anything anymore at the Oscars, and a load of women who ain't wearing anything anymore at the Brits. And apparently some films and stars won awards. The film that won 5 biggest awards at the Oscars, Anora, never heard of it. I don't mean like I've not seen it. I've never even heard that word mentioned to me. I watched a trailer for it this morning. Nope, can't see why that's an Oscar-winning film either. But there we are. What do I know? I've had breakfast this morning, which is more than most people at the Oscars had ever done. Let's turn our attention to my brilliant guest joining me, as always, on a Monday morning, commentator Sam Armstrong, desperately wiping everything down with disinfectant wipes as I cough and sneeze everywhere off air. You're doing well. I just bring in my colds and coughs and I give them to you on a Monday.
Yeah, the real point is I have just about shaken off the 100-day cough that you gave me just before Christmas.
Sorry.
And now you're back here with more goods.
I have nephews at nursery and I have a teenager at sixth form.
Yes.
And I work in an office full of 20-year-olds. I get everything going.
Yes, you also dance in nightclubs and go on big
I don't know what you're
parties.
talking. In no way was I dancing on a podium in a nightclub on Friday night. Don't ever make that allegation. I would never do that. I'm a 56-year-old responsible member of society. Anyway, let's move on. Let's talk. I did do that. Let's talk about Trump and Zelensky. I'd love to see that. The memes that have been going around involving Zelensky basically punching Donald Trump in the face and Donald Trump being dragged along like a dog in the snow by Vladimir Putin on a lead. I mean, they are the ones that ring true to me about what happened at that Oval Office meeting on Friday. Not to Trump fans. They say that Trump was... It was outrageous behaviour from Zelensky. He's a warmonger. He's a dictator, and it's Donald Trump who wants peace and is the reasonable person. Is that how you see it?
No, absolutely not. Let's be very, very, very clear. Volodymyr Zelensky was democratically elected to lead his country, and by any rational standard, he has gone above and beyond the call of duty. He has stuck in his country when he was offered a ride out, when all hope seemed to have faded. He stuck in, he led, and he managed to convince and to inspire his entire country to resist what we used to believe was the second most powerful army on earth.
Yeah.
We now believe that the Russian army is basically the second most powerful army in Ukraine. And that the credit for that belongs to one man, and that is Volodymyr Zelensky, who inspired everybody around the world. And look, the situation has got difficult. And it's got difficult because war always ends up this way. It takes longer than you think. We always say, you know, we said the First World War was going to end by Christmas. We said the Second World War would be over in a year or two.
Yeah.
It never is, because people dig in, things get harder to face. And what Vladimir Zelensky is doing is he's going to the world and he's asking them to show an ounce, a gram, a percentage point of the backbone that he has shown for so long. And he's saying, stick with us. Look, I want to get to a peace deal. And look, he is now making concessions that would have seemed impossible for the Ukrainians to say. He said, right, they can have Crimea, which they seized by force in 2014, the last time they invaded.
Yeah, I think just realistically, not getting Crimea back.
He is basically prepared to do a deal by which the vast territories of Ukraine, which Russia seized by force using military power, that invaded his country, he's prepared to do a deal by which they get sovereignty over them. That is an extraordinarily
in return
generous
for a
deal.
guarantee for the rest of his country. This is bare minimum stuff.
This is a huge win for Putin. He's prepared to sign up to. It's a huge win.
And in return for NATO membership, he would leave the presidency.
Or, by the way, he hasn't even, I don't think, he is not even drawing the red line at NATO membership. What he's saying is, look, give us some peacekeepers so they can't invade us without attacking your guys too.
And therefore, right? And then I mean, let's have a little watch and listen to that clip of what Donald Trump, when he got really, you don't have the cards now. This is what, just a reminder on Friday of what Donald Trump said to Zelensky in the Oval Office.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. Right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Of course, it's Donald Trump who's gambling with World War III by giving a sop to Vladimir Putin. A little earlier, we couldn't play this full clip. I do want to play it now. J.D. Vance's vice president just stepping in. I mean, really, I thought quite vicious. And by the way, also completely inaccurate criticism of Zelensky. Here's what he had to say.
Have you said thank you once this entire meeting? No, in this entire meeting, have you said thank you? You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war,
He's not speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. Your country's in big trouble.
Can I
Wait a minute. No, you've done a lot of talking.
I mean, again, this is quite wrong. Repeatedly, Vladimir Putin. Sorry, that was a Trump. That was a Bidenism. Zelensky has thanked the American people, thanked Joe Biden. He has thanked Trump. And that earlier in that meeting, he had said thank you. I mean, it's just a load of nonsense. And then we had this idiot guy married to Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's utterly insane, saying, you know, why aren't you wearing a suit? This is outrageous. No one seemed to mind when Winston Churchill didn't wear a suit. I tell you what, King Charles didn't mind when he didn't wear a suit to meet him yesterday.
But just be clear, that bloke was wearing a cheap polyester, ill-fitting, bright blue suit. This guy was a total joke, and those horrible brown shoes with white soles.
Oh, let it go. No, but the key thing is, like, he's made it clear he's not going to wear a suit because he's a wartime leader, and it's not business as usual. He's making that point. I do not understand why. And again, if you are arguing about, and it was Zelensky who went like, why are we talking about this? I want to talk about the serious things. He was talking about saving people's lives. What would you do? And the question I'm putting out about Keir Starmer, what would he do to help? What should he do to help Ukraine? What would you do, Sam Armstrong, if you were Prime Minister of this country right now?
Do you know what? I think it's incredibly difficult, but the reality is we are going to require European peacekeepers on the ground to maintain a demilitarised zone in Ukraine. Now, we can't do them ourselves. I'll tell you why we can't do them, because the British Army right now wouldn't fill Old Trafford.
Yeah.
Right? We have totally totally degraded ourselves, our own military capacity, to the extent that we cannot conduct that kind of operation.
Which is a bit telling in itself in a dangerous age.
It's more than telling, it's disgraceful, it is shocking. Politician after politician has come on this channel, a number of other channels, and talked tough on defence for the last 20, 30 years, while all the time allowing the basic function of our national security to be evaporated before our very eyes. We have sold out our soldiers who live in appalling accommodation with mould up the walls, worse than council estates across this country. We have allowed ourselves to get rid of our ships, get rid of our tanks, get rid of our artillery. We have a parlous situation in which we can no longer defend ourselves. So they need to come on here and apologise as far as I'm
But also
concerned.
it's the idea that British politicians will say again and again, well, you know, the thing is we don't, you know, we can't do it on our own. Yeah, but we can't because you've made a choice. There was a choice to, again, the post-Cold War dividend, well, great. But, I mean, I don't know how many years I've been on air on this station where I've had military experts come on and basically say, we are facing a much more dangerous age. We've seen that. And they say, well, you know, we're not quite sure whether we can deter Vladimir Putin. Well, you haven't even tried because he hasn't been deterred. He has got away with everything he's ever done. There is no punishment. Oh, the economic sanctions. Oh, you have to sell your oil and your gas to India and China. Oh, and when you sell it to India, they then sell it back to us and we're buying it anyway. Germany needs to step up. They're still importing huge amounts of Russian gas. Everyone needs to get with the programme. What amazes me is again, the first function of a government in this country, in any country, is protection of the realm. You need to be able to defend your country and your country's interests. And we wouldn't even be able to defend Britain right now. We'd have to go on a war footing. Here's the worry, though. Here is the big worry, is that when you look at the economy in Russia, 40% now of government spending is now on the military. The entire manufacturing base has been turned over to the military. In terms of that, there's a massive shortage of men. I mean, 500,000 plus have left the country and escaped elsewhere to avoid conscription. They've got so few men, they're having to take people out of their prisons. We are talking about a country that is basically living, it's booming at the moment, but only because of defence and military spending. You take out that war, that economy collapses. I don't know if it's possible for Putin to backtrack at this point because his entire regime rests on that war continuing. That is the biggest worry.
Well, there's two huge worries there. Firstly, as well as giving Vladimir Putin half of Ukraine, Crimea, the right to have all of these Black Sea bases permanently, and banning Ukraine permanently from joining NATO, which was their democratic decision to join in the first place, we are now going to have to drop all of the sanctions on Russia in order to make it happen. That possibly still won't be enough to protect Russia from the vast recession that is going to follow the war. So what are they likely to do? Well, they're likely to go and raid Georgia, which is a country just on the border, which is going through its own political troubles right now, which is what they've done in the past. Because Vladimir Putin sees himself in much the same vein that the Tsars of Russia viewed themselves for centuries, which is a constant imperial power, which is basically enriching themselves by constantly invading all of its near neighbours. This isn't new, by the way. This isn't new thinking. There was a thing in America called the Long Telegram written back that predicted the entire Cold War on the basis that this is what Russia has done for centuries. It goes around invading its near neighbours until such a stage as it all falls over, and then the cycle starts all over again.
And there's a lot of just geographical reality here as well, in terms of this long basic plain between basically Belgium and Moscow. I mean, that's the reality. I just find it fascinating. What do you make, just finally, Trump state visit, lots of calls, front page of the Mail on Sunday, and others saying we should rescind the visit to Donald Trump for his unprecedented second visit to the state visit to this country. I mean, it seems to me that is an unnecessary, we have a royal family for a reason, so you can use them for these sorts of things. If that is a way of sweetening things for Donald Trump and keeping him happy, keeping him on side with us, that's, I think, something we should do. Would you cancel that state visit?
Absolutely, categorically not. Okay. Donald Trump is, for all of his flaws, an ally of ours. He is involved in the protection of this country, right? We rely on the Americans for our nuclear deterrent, for so much of our national security.
If he wants to go and visit the king, he gets to visit the king.
He's a huge ally of us. And the way you win over Donald Trump... Look, I don't like what he did, right? I thought what he did was wrong. I thought what he's done on a bunch of other stuff was right. But if you want to persuade him, even on that point alone... bring the guy in, persuade him, you catch more flies with honey than vinegar.
Absolutely. Now, in the last half an hour or so, Zelensky has posted a tweet, maybe loads of tweets over the weekend, thanking everybody for their help and their support. He's tweeted, Ukraine is fighting for the normal and safe life it deserves, for a just and reliable peace. We want this war to end, but Russia does not, and continues its aerial terror. Over the past week, more than 1,050 attack drones, nearly 1,300 aerial bombs, and more than 20 missiles have been launched at Ukraine to destroy cities and kill people. Those who seek negotiations do not deliberately strike civilians with ballistic missiles. I mean, ta-da, yeah. To force Russia to stop its attacks, we need greater collective strength from the world, strengthening our air defence, supporting our army and ensuring effective security guarantees that will make the return of Russian aggression impossible. This is what we must focus on. Justice must prevail. We believe in the power of unity and we will certainly restore lasting peace. I mean, this is really basic stuff. Who knows whether Trump's going to be convinced by this. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Talking of another war, which Israel is on the right side on, and again, I find it utterly perplexing how so many people can be on the right side of what's going on in the Middle East, but on the wrong side of what's going on in Ukraine. But Gaza, Israel have agreed to a proposal for an extension of the ceasefire deal. They have more hostages released. I have to say, I find it so painful, the idea that we'll have 3 live and 3 dead hostages at this time. And then we know that these men and women are being starved to death. We are talking about drastic conditions in those tunnels. But Hamas have rejected the extension of the ceasefire deal. It's almost like they don't want peace for their people sometimes, isn't it? But Israel's now cut off all aid, no aid going into the country. I'm like, well, fair enough. It's up to Hamas, isn't it? If they want peace, they'd allow it.
Underneath the streets of Gaza are being held desperate, terrified, young people, old people, hostages of all types. And Israel is desperate to get its people back. Desperate to get its people back. Look, if that was me, if that was my daughter down there in those tunnels, I would be raising the Gaza to the floor. Israel has shown extraordinary restraint through all of this. And how has Hamas, this vile terrorist organisation, chosen to repay it? By staging these heinous scenes in which mentally unwell, developmentally challenged young Israeli hostages are paraded through the streets, being thought that they're being brought out to their execution, and making theatre out of this.
And of babies in their coffins when they've been strangled to death, according to Israeli pathologists.
It gets hundreds of convicted terrorists back in exchange for every one of these innocent hostages.
Who, by the way, seem to be, it's again, so much the people, the BBC, you get this moral equivalence, like, oh, they've returned these prisoners in terrible condition. I mean, you're talking about, this man he's the longest held prisoner. Yeah, because when he was a teenager, a 17-year-old, he raped and murdered someone. That's why he's been in prison.
And just one last point on Israel cutting off all aid. Gaza doesn't just have one border. It has another border into Egypt. There are 7 walls between Egypt and the Gaza Strip. Why? Because Egypt, another Muslim country, wants absolutely nothing to do with these people, and it's not letting in any trucks just as much as Israel isn't.
Absolutely. Look, just finally, I do want to ask you about this controversial BBC Gaza documentary that has been pulled. It's now emerged that the BBC's most senior news boss actually watched this documentary 3 weeks before it got put out, which I'm on air. This is Deborah Turner, Chief Executive of BBC News and Current Affairs. She watched it, Gaza, How to Survive a War Zone, and basically didn't clock, interestingly, didn't clock the continuity issues, like the kid had different haircuts on the same day and wore 3 different pairs of shoes in the space of an hour or 2. Again, I mean, just things like that. And again, it's minor stuff, but it'll make you go, hold on a minute, can we trust this as a piece of news reporting? But the fact, crucially, that this was the son of a Hamas official, a Hamas minister. Payments were made to this son's sister and mum, but like, no money's gone to Hamas, which of course would be illegal because they're a prescribed terror organisation. 400 grand this cost. 400 grand.
This woman's job is untenable. She's got to go, right? She is paid hundreds of thousands of pounds a year in order to run a news organisation. Instead, not just in this film, but particularly in this film, she has allowed the BBC to be used as a propaganda unit of a terrorist organisation. We now learn that they may have committed a literal terrorist offence corporately as the BBC. Not to mention, time after time again, we see BBC articles having to be removed because they breach basic editorial standards, and the bias is always in one direction.
But also, here's the crucial thing. I'm not allowed to talk to a kid. As a reporter, yeah, and news journalist, I can't go and talk to a kid, right? Yeah, look, even in a war zone, you'd have to get permission. Your guys, I mean, okay, you can't send BBC people in because Hamas controls everything. You'd have to ask me, who is this child? Can we have the identity of this child? But told they didn't know it's a Hamas official. But if you just asked for the identity of the child, you could look him up. I mean, it's all on Google. They don't hide their identities, by the way, of the cameraman who cheered on and celebrated the massacre on October the 7th. It is just utterly extraordinary. And again, heads have to roll. 11:22 is the time. Welcome to give your thoughts on that. A lot of you got in touch last week about that, but mostly wanting your calls today about what should Keir Starmer do to help Ukraine. Maybe you think nothing at all. Maybe you think he should act. Should he cancel that state visit for the King if and when it ever happens? Love to hear your thoughts on all of it. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. We'll get to your message. We'll get to your calls up next. This is Talk.
Netanyahu does have a massive problem with right-wing Israeli Zionist zealots.
Excuse me, did you just call someone who wants a two-state solution a Zionist? Are you mad?
No.
Benjamin Netanyahu is defending his people. How dare you,
I'm not calling Benjamin Netanyahu. I'm saying he's
You're calling him a Zionist.
You're not listening to me. No, you're not listening to me.
Two-state solution.
No, you're not listening to me. He's got some rabid right-wingers who are extremists in the same mould as Hamas.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is indeed Talk, as the nice man said, and I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Sam Armstrong, also a nice man, who's also with us. Let's go straight to the phone lines, 0344 499 1000, and hear what you have to say. What should Keir Starmer do to help Ukraine? George is in Derby. Hello, George. Hello, George, can you hear me? Hello, George. Hello, George. Oh, we can't go to George. Well, we'll try and get him back up. We'll get another caller up in just 1 second. Let me read some of the messages. Sam says Starmer should focus on helping Britain. He needs to stop meddling in other countries. If we'd done that to begin with, none of this would have happened. No, I mean, that's literally... No, Sam, you're literally wrong. I mean, we're not meddling. We're trying to save an ally, for goodness sake. Emma says, tell him to accept the Americans' offer of security by signing the minerals deal, then let the USA negotiate a peace deal. There isn't an offer of security with the minerals deal. That's why he won't accept it. Georgie says, I think the best thing he can do for this country is resign. Leslie says, exactly what he's doing, playing into Trump's strategy. And Steph says he should pressure Zelensky into resigning without NATO membership. He should pressure Zelensky into allowing Ukrainians choose who lead them. They did, Stephanie, and they elected Zelensky. Do you remember during the Second World War? No, you probably don't, and neither do I, because we weren't alive then. But we didn't have an election during the Second World War because we were at war. 20% of the country being seized by foreigners, by a foreign force, and many other people abroad. You can't hold a war in those, hold an election in those circumstances. Again, Kremlin talking point. Those messages are all Kremlin talking points. You're just being led by the troll farms, guys. Let's go to Ian, who is in London. Hello, Ian.
Before I start, first of all, wish you best with your cold.
Oh, for goodness sake. I'm not dying of something. Just got a cold, but thank you. Very sweet.
Secondly, thank you very much, as per usual, about Israel. Right, now on to the next bit.
There's a but coming, everybody.
No, not with you.
Yeah.
Not with you, I promise you. Last Tuesday, Macron turns up, as per normal, only one thing in his mind: what is in it for France? Because that's where the French have been all their lives. And he doesn't change. The next day or the day after, Starmer turns up. Starmer has got the lowest ratings for a PM here. He's in trouble. He's got to get something. So he goes in, he gives a lovely invitation from the king, then he drops his trousers, listens to what Trump says because he wants the Chekhov deal and everything else. And goes along with everything, but both come out with the idea that Trump is going to back Zelensky and everything's going to be fine. They come out, they say to Zelensky, everything's fine. Zelensky turns up, no differently dressed to how he's been throughout the period, even when he went to the UN to see the Pope, everybody, no different. But he's in the belief everything is going to be fine. Trump already knows that he's mugged off the other two to make them think he's going to look after him. Then he starts taking the mickey because, quite simply, he's doing a typical, what you would call a closers thing. He's giving it, but he's making him jump through the hoops to get the deal.
Yeah,
that's the whole point. Normally, when a salesman goes into a house, he's not going to just say, do you want double glazing? Because he knows they're not going to spend thousands straight away. So he's got to make him jump through all the hoops. And it was... But the real sort of thing is that no matter, what Trump says that he wants America to pull away, they are still involved. But what I can't understand, sorry, I'm babbling on.
No, you're
here,
not. Carry on.
Right? Is that if NATO was the most important thing, why did Biden never, ever offer it to Zelensky in the first place?
There was a general view, wasn't there, that somehow that would be effectively confrontational with Vladimir Putin. But also, I think Turkey and others, Hungary and others, wouldn't actually agree to it because it has to be unanimous. But here's the thing: I don't think either Macron or Starmer came away from their meetings with Donald Trump thinking everything was hunky dory. I think everyone was very wary. But the point was that Zelensky, is very persuasive. We know Donald Trump is largely influenced by the last person who spoke to him. There's lots of evidence for that. That you could probably try and persuade him, and he realised that the deal on the table was just not a deal. It's just, it's basically, you use the word mug, but it's basically a mugging. It was a mugging. Like, we'll take your minerals, but we won't give you anything in return. It's not a deal. That's not a deal.
Well, the only thing that I saw initially when I sort of maybe was taken in a little bit by it was that if there are American members of staff or American, whether they're staff really or they're CIA agents or...
if they're on the ground, then the Americans would have to act. I'm afraid I just don't think that was going to wash. And again, do we seriously think that Zelensky would turn that down if he thought that was going to be the deal? It was going to be a wink, wink, don't worry, anything happens, we'll make sure Putin knows. When you've got Donald Trump basically saying that Putin is completely trustworthy, he's a man who's not a threat, and you should do the deal. I don't see how you could possibly accept that deal. Ian, so appreciate your call. Thank you very much, indeed. Let's go to Joe. He's in Essex. Hi, Joe.
Hi, Julia. How are you?
Very well, sir. What do you want to say?
Well, I'm really conflicted here. And I'm not one of those people that's very hard on either side of it.
Joe, can I stop you, my love? It's got a really unclear line. Can you, I don't know, step to the left or the right? Often these random things work. I don't know. We can get a clearer line. Not much better. No. Okay. Oh, Don, we're going to have to drop it. Can we squeeze another call in now? I'll go to a couple of other messages before we get to another call. But, Joe, we'll try and get you back on in the next hour. There's another, don't imagine this is another Joe. Starmer should cut all funding to Ukraine. John says, not a thing, not our business, never was. Anthony says, keep his nose out. Nothing, absolutely nothing. It's not our war, says Carol. Sam, this is the stuff I really worry about. It's like, not our problem, not our war. Well, neither was Sudetenland, neither was Czechoslovakia, neither was Poland. I mean, not our problem. Neither was Iraq, neither was Afghanistan. People can make arguments about neither was Syria. You know what? They have a funny habit of becoming our problem, those wars, don't they?
Yeah, you boil frogs slowly, and it's the same with dictators. They take somewhere that's not you, a far, far away land of which we know little, and over time they come closer and closer and closer and closer. And people like Putin won't stop until they are forced to stop. This is a guy who was in the KGB in Eastern Europe. He was pulling out people's fingernails before he was barely out of short trousers, right? This is a psychopath. And the only way you deal with a man like that is by forcing him to stop. Otherwise, he's just going to keep going.
The only thing he understands is force. Let's go to Andrew, who's in Hertfordshire. Hello, Andrew.
Good morning, Julia. Cracking show. Well done on the Israel stuff. You really are a shining voice in relation to that.
You're very kind. I think we're just trying to say what we think is right on this show. But where are you on Ukraine?
So if you look at it, you know as well as I do, historically it's always women that suffer. Those Russian soldiers went in...
Hold on a minute. I don't know many people whose grandmothers were killed in the Second World War.
No, I'm talking about this one here. The Russian soldiers went in and they raped and murdered women on the Ukrainian border. And that's what Trump doesn't want to realise. We have to support Starmer in supporting Ukraine. We have to go very... Your guest was quite right. We need to go into the social security budget. It's 260 million. Cut it to 60. People with cancer, people are dying. We need to take that money and invest in arms. And we need to support Zelensky because Putin is a butcher and a murderer. And if you don't believe that, go and talk to the families affected at Salisbury, what happened at the Arsenal Stadium, and those mysterious businessmen on the Russian side who've been dying in the UK. We've been at war with Russia. And if you want the root cause of this, Julia, it's when Obama is a coward over Syria and the mustard gas.
That red line. Oh yeah, that absolutely. That was when the rot really sat in, isn't it? Andrew, really appreciate your call. Thank you so much. Going to take a quick break. Up next, going to talk to a former advisor to President Zelensky about what he wants to happen next. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Sam Armstrong still with me. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Delighted to welcome to the show now Igor Novikov. He's a former advisor to President Volodymyr Zelensky and joins us on the line. Very good morning to you, Igor.
Good morning, Julia.
I have to say, I mean, it has been the most extraordinary last few days. I mean, that hour in the Oval Office was one of the most extraordinary things I've ever seen in my life. Just first of all, what did you make of the exchanges between Donald Trump and J.D. Vance with the man that you used to advise as president?
Well, it's actually a funny story. It reminded me of a classic James Bond film. Do you remember when James Bond goes like, "Do you expect me to talk?" And the villain goes, "No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die." That was exactly like that. There was no right answer there. So it seemed like a setup. They wanted to wipe the floor with our president, and judging from everything else that's going on, there's a very, look, the way I see it, there's a very fine line between trying to put pressure on both Russia and Ukraine for a peace deal and outright helping Russia. And I think Donald Trump has crossed that line already.
Well, and that's the thing. And I can completely understand that you can say, look, I'm trying to broker between the two. He doesn't take that stance, interestingly, when it comes to Hamas and Israel. It's very, very, very clear that strength and delivering peace is going to come through, nope, I'm on the side of Israel, end of. But he takes such a different stance when it comes to Ukraine, and I find utterly flabbergasting, although not unpredicted. But he does seem to believe that Vladimir Putin is someone he can trust, that he's a man he can do business with. And the point at which he became angry with Zelensky was when Zelensky was saying, but we've already had deals with Putin after the invasion of Crimea, and he broke his word on every single commitment he made. Why, he basically was saying, why do you think you can trust this guy, and why do you expect us to trust this guy when he hasn't given his word, and you're not offering a guarantee to act if he does break his word? And that was the point when Donald Trump got angry. Why do you think he trusts Vladimir Putin, as he claims?
Well, I think a psychiatrist is, a better equipped person to answer that question. But to be honest, I mean, I do have my theory. I mean, first of all, President Trump is showing signs of narcissism, and Putin is a KGB guy. So he's got some really clever guys working for him, and it's really easy to manipulate a narcissist. That's point number one. Point number two, I think Donald Trump and J.D. Vance both live in that illusional world where basically they can just somehow get rid of Ukraine. That's in a way as a problem. Make a deal with Russia, first of all, an economic deal, which would, in their mind, would cause American economy to grow at a rapid pace. And they imagine this trilateral world where the US will still remain the world policeman, but Russia and China will be playing, the henchman. Unfortunately, that's not how it's going to work out. The way it's going at the moment, I think President Trump, just like a proverbial elephant in a China store, he's going to destroy everything and China will pick up the pieces. No pun intended.
Yeah, I mean, and that is the trouble. And as we've learned with Syria and elsewhere, when America decides not to be the world policeman and all the people on the liberal left go, oh, isn't it terrible, all these American incursions in other countries? Well, when America doesn't get involved, other countries do. And I certainly have a preference that it's America, not China and Russia or Iran or others. But this is the thing. I mean, there is this delusion, it does appear. I'm surprised that J.D. Vance is playing along with it. I don't think he believes for a second anything that he has said on this. I know he's doing an interview overnight on Fox News. Be interested to hear what he's got. I'm assuming he's going to double down. But what do they expect is going to happen? That they're going to convince Zelensky to do a deal, either stand down or whatever. They do a deal. No proper commitment from NATO or America to defend the rest of the Ukrainian state, and that Vladimir Putin won't, after taking Crimea in 2014 and not enough action, after taking the Donbass and really no punishment for it in real terms, what do they think is going to happen? Do they really think that Vladimir Putin will go, fair enough, that's my lot, I won't take any more? Because he's been very clear. He wrote essays He wrote public essays. He's made public statements before the invasion in 22 that he doesn't believe that Ukraine is an independent sovereign nation state and it should be Russian.
Well, Julia, I mean, most importantly, one of the main reasons Putin invaded Ukraine, well, there were two main reasons. One was his delusional understanding that Ukraine will fall quickly, in 3 days. And I think he shares that delusion with President Trump. President Trump thinks he can break Zelensky really easily with those theatrics in the White House or something else. So that's delusion number one. But more importantly here, I think what he's playing at the moment is the regime change in Kiev, because Zelensky, both by staying in Ukraine in February 22, and let me tell you this, I mean, I've personally met and know every single Ukrainian president, every single one. I know them personally. And out of all the top politicians in Ukraine, I can probably name a couple more who would have stayed. Everyone else would have fled to Poland, set up a government.
And Donald Trump in the same situation would have fled.
Yeah, and Russia failed in trying to take out Zelensky. Now they're trying to use Trump to take out Zelensky. So I fully expect, that FBI Patel guy trying to figure out, some scandal to smear Zelensky.
Well, they don't even need to have a real scandal. They can make stuff up. I mean, most of the stuff on the internet right now is completely... He took power in a military coup. No, there had been a military coup. There had been a coup, but he's democratically elected president, and all of this stuff. But this is the thing, though. I mean, Donald Trump does have history with Zelensky. Remember when he was president first time round, Donald Trump? He appealed. Well, you were there at advisor. He appealed to Zelensky. Well, basically, it was a phone call. I mean, this was his first impeachment in Congress, was it not? He was impeached in the House of Representatives over pressuring and basically saying you need to basically launch an investigation into Hunter Biden, and I think there was dodgy dealings by the Bidens. I'm 100% convinced of that. But he basically, in return for me releasing congressional money for you, I think it was $400 million, you have to do this deal for me. Now, he's got a history with Zelensky. Do you think it's personal for him?
I think it is. Because I was in the room during that phone call between Zelensky and Trump.
Wow.
I was in the room with Trump. I met him twice. So I was the US guy when that was happening. Zelensky's top advisor on the US. He actually offered me to go and become an ambassador to the US, but I turned it down. So you can imagine being Ukrainian ambassador during the Trump presidency is not the sweetest gig you can get. But yeah, I think it's personal, but I think Russia is also at play here because the same military aid is still in question, but only now Trump is going after the military aid that was already kind of issued and assigned by, the House of Representatives, the Senate, the former administration. That's crossing the line into outright helping Russia for whatever reason.
And Biden rushed a lot of that through deliberately because there was this fear that Donald Trump would stop this. And in terms of how the Europeans, and particularly the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, has reacted, and we saw, very blatant, open, Zelensky invited to the summit, already in place. The summit was planned in London already. But, the world figuratively and in actuality putting their arms around Zelensky. The meeting with the king was a clear signal. The walking Zelensky to his car at Downing Street, there was clear, we are on your side, a signal to the world, crucially signal to Putin, but also to Donald Trump. Do you trust that the Europeans can or will or have the will to do enough to help Ukraine if Donald Trump does, as many fear, pull the plug on aid to Ukraine?
I believe so, yes. I don't think it's going to happen straight away. I think, Europe needs to come to its senses and overcome certain problems. Hello, Prime Minister Orban, for example. I think the United Kingdom also needs to kind of figure out that it's a real threat rather than something that you can just sit through. Yeah. I think, every time I get asked about NATO, whether, Ukraine should join NATO, whether, Europe should worry about Ukraine joining NATO, my answer has been for the last 3 years that NATO should worry about America rather than Ukraine should worry about NATO. Because I think we're seeing the last days of NATO. I think if I'm right, President Trump will do everything in his power to actually destroy NATO as an alliance. And if that happens, you guys are on your own. And look, I'll end with this. When Trump called Zelensky a dictator, Nigel Farage said, listen, mate, he's not.
Yeah.
And if Nigel Farage actually tells you to calm down, I mean, you should know you overstepped a bit.
Yeah, it's been very noticeable, actually, reform not going down that line. I'm just going to ask you one final question. When a lot of people, you've seen it in response to our question today, online, on the phone, say, it's not our problem, it's not our war, we don't want to spill any British blood, we don't want to spend any money, we've got problems at home. What do you say to that?
Fair enough. Then just give it another couple of years and it will be a problem, but the solution won't be easy. You're lucky we're fighting for you. If it weren't for Ukraine, I mean, Trump said Ukraine doesn't have any cards. I mean, first of all, if Zelensky wanted to surrender, he'd go to Moscow, not Washington. That's the first kind of point here. The second point being, Ukraine always has an option to kind of say enough is enough. But if we do that, you guys are on your own with Russia, and then it won't be fun.
Really good point. Igor Novikov, former advisor to President Zelensky, so appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. Again, he wasn't dressed in a way that Donald Trump would have approved, or J.D. Vance or Marjorie Taylor Greene's husband would approve, or was he? Sam Armstrong, what do you make of what he had to say?
Well, look, I'm a man that wears a suit to work pretty much every day.
I imagine you wear a suit sort of, you know, at home having a cup of tea.
Well, look, I think in this country it's important when you go out to do business, you put on business clothes. But do you know what? If I met Zelensky, I'd be honoured that someone was there wearing their wartime garb and taking the time to go and see me. And
but let's get to the important stuff.
The important point is, as we heard right at the end, this is a long way away, theoretically, from us now. But one more country in from Ukraine, we are right on the borders of NATO. And that is Putin's aim, right? He is getting as far and far and far into Europe as we possibly can. And look, we've seen what he's done with gas. Can you just imagine next time round if Putin gets what he wants, control of the vast chunk of Ukraine? Yep. And not only can he turn off the gas taps, he can turn off the wheat bowl of the world, and he can literally
fertilizer, sunflower oil, these are absolutely crucial to our
He could literally starve us out. And people said, oh, no, he would never do that. What is it about this man? What is it about this former KGB agent who was so ruthless he got to the top of Russian politics that convinces you can trust him?
Yeah.
One jot.
Absolutely. 11:48 is the time. Love to hear your thoughts on what Igor had to say. Up next, we're going to be talking about the really important stuff. A load of women who haven't eaten anything in God knows how long, and a load of other women who don't seem to wear anything more. Yeah, we're going to be talking about the Oscars and the Brits. That's up next with Caroline Frost. This is Talk.
What will it cost Europe? What will it cost the United States? And if the answer is no, we have to look at what that costs us as well. This moral grandstanding, you win wars on the battlefield and not via tweet.
That is what worries me, that all of this kind of, these videos that are being made, they've got music put to them, we're going to stand firm, we're going to stand tall, we're going to be strong abroad, and we're going to be secure at home. Well, most of the European nations who were in attendance at that can't even protect their own borders, never mind protect Ukraine's borders.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. Commentator Sam Armstrong is with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer, right now. Sam, I can just imagine you spent all last night staying up to watch Hollywood stars winning their awards. You must have watched the Brits on Saturday night. Is this your bag?
Well, I could have started by watching any of the films that won any of the awards.
I've not even heard of most of them.
Anora?
Literally never heard that word until this morning. Literally never heard that word before this morning.
This was Hollywood at its most insular looking. Look, I'll take that after years and years of giving the gong to the wokest film to come out this year.
Yeah.
At least not having heard of them was.
Was there a black lesbian trans director that could be given an award? I don't know. Well, let's ask someone who does know. This is her lifeblood. She loves this stuff enough for all three of us. Caroline Frost is an entertainment journalist. Very, very good morning to you, Caroline.
Hello.
Hello. Can I say, Anora, where did that come from? Never heard of it. 5 Oscars, 5 of the biggest.
Julia, you've been sleeping. It won the Palme d'Or. It's been getting all sorts of critical bouquets for the last 8 months of the year. It definitely wasn't the front leader going towards season. That belonged to either The Brutalist or Emilia Perez.
For playing a trans person.
Lots of
I watched a trailer for this film. It does not look very good.
Oh, I think you're being harsh. That's a spellbinding central performance from Mikey Madison. But I do think that the best Oscar should have gone for Demi Moore's loser face when it did go to Mikey Madison, because all bets have been on Demi Moore going into this award season, and yet she went away empty-handed. She can now join the likes of Glenn Close and others, who are probably the hardest working people never to actually bag an Oscar. But poor old Demi Moore, yes. I think people have been employing lip readers this morning to see what she actually said when the envelope was open.
If it was me, I would say a bad word beginning with F and ending with K if I didn't, and I'd do it on camera. Here you go. I'd make sure I was the story for losing it. There are a lot of big winners. There's some surprise winners. It's the 97th Academy Awards, but I have to say a lot of the focus in the media has been on the Ozempic Oscars and how skinny everyone is, and basically everyone in Hollywood, even more than usual, is obsessed with these fat jabs. Everyone's losing weight. It's not just like obese people losing weight to try and apparently get healthy. It's skinny women getting even skinnier. I mean, most of these women don't eat for 2 weeks anyway to get into their dresses. It's a very worrying trend.
It is strange. I mean, it's leading the way. Obviously, Ozempic is having an effect on women and men throughout the world, but all those cameras went on those people. We know that they pluck, they trim, they shave for months going into this event. As you say, an awful lot of flesh on display. Perhaps the thinking is, you know what, if I've taken all those injections, I'm damn well going to shoehorn myself into that nice dress. But if you're already quite slim, the likes of Ariana Grande and others, it's like you're making a point that you are skinnier than the Ozempic brigade. So it's sort of turning into two tribes, and they are both revealing an awful lot more of themselves. So I was just looking at some of the outfits. Megan Thee Stallion was wearing a dress. I mean, do you remember when Janet Jackson was cancelled because she was wearing a nipple cover in her wardrobe malfunction at the Super Bowl?
Yeah.
We now have a dress that was built around a nipple cover. It's extraordinary stuff. Something happened, I would say, about 20 years ago. I remember working for an Australian newspaper, and this lovely lady, the pictures editor, said, I've been looking at the red carpet for an awards, and she said, I feel like some of these outfits used to belong in the red light district. When did they come across?
Well,
and of course, I had no answer, but it's not, the genie is not.
No, well, the Brits were even worse. A lot of the performers were, and the online pages are going, oh, sexy outfit. Like, you've got red stockings and red suspenders on. It's not sexy. That's just tacky. They are literally dressing like $10 hookers on stage. The women they've barely got a single thing on. I am no prude at all. I've short skirts. I'm not, but it's genuinely disturbing to me. She's a mother of a teenage girl. When you look at the clothing that a lot of these young women who are being admired by young women are wearing, everything is out. Everything is on display. They wear fewer clothes on stage than I wear going on the beach.
In the bath.
I mean, on the bath, yeah, exactly. But it's so sexualized. And what I really hate about it is the women are saying they're empowered by it, and they're not empowered by it. It's just porn. That's all it is. It's porn.
Well, do we think that Kanye West's wife, inverted commas, is that empowering what she... I mean, of course, when she pulls a stunt like that, I saw somebody was wearing an outfit that was described as a Bianca Censori-inspired outfit. Well, I have to say, that's not much of an outfit. That's a birthday suit. I know.
No, but also, Kanye West was always fully dressed, funnily enough.
We could do a whole conference.
Well, I was of the view, by the way, that though I think all the pictures, they need to stop doing those pictures. I think you were literally looking at an abuse victim throughout that, and I found it all very disturbing. But again, so you've got these skinny women, you've got the women who are like putting everything out there. But again, it's what bothers me is it's young women looking at this and thinking this is normal, that it's acceptable, that it's desirable, and this becomes normalised.
Well, what is strange is when you look back on sort of what we call the golden age of Hollywood, the likes of Grace Kelly, Debbie Reynolds, Elizabeth Taylor, were all considered incredibly desirable, beautiful women. And they often had sleeves down to their wrists and collars up to their chins, and it didn't seem to interfere with how they were desired or thought of. It was a very different era, and I do think that I think there'll be a kickback. I mean, Me Too saw a bunch of them on the red carpet wearing much more conservative
they wore black dresses to make a point. Oh, so brave.
Be kind, Julia, be kind.
No, these people are idiots.
It is strange which way it's going. I mean, they're obviously in the hands of stylists. It's all about trends. And of course, it does secure them lots of coverage, which it's all about the brand. If you get the coverage, you get the attention, you get the followers.
And a load of male picture editors and a load of... I'm sorry. And again, I just think this is not feminism. It's not what our mothers and grandmothers and grandmothers fought. You've got the right to show your body if you want to, but you have to have it out there all the time. Callum Frost, thank you so much for joining us. Entertainment journalist Callum Frost. The reality is, Sam Armstrong, there is more talk about this stuff than there is about the films.
Yeah, but Julia, it's not men that look at this stuff online.
It's
women that look on it online.
Totally.
Don't blame us male picture editors. It's women that want to look at this stuff all day long.
But something to the imagination, ladies. I mean, at least one nipple to the imagination. Anyway, we're going to talk more about sensible things up next. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good afternoon to you. Welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer, and yet another sodding cold. And commentator Sam Armstrong desperately sitting in the room with me, trying not to catch it. Welcome to the show again.
It's so lovely to see you, Julia.
Genuinely, he walks in, he sees me blow my nose, he's like, oh, not another one, not another one. I'll tell you what, though, I mean, you know, rather fewer problems than the likes of President Zelensky and Ukraine have. What I loved, you know, one of my things that I thought was absolutely fascinating, actually, in the Oval Office exchange with Donald Trump, was Donald Trump, when he was defending Putin, and saying how awful it was that Vladimir Putin had to deal with these allegations that he and Trump had been in collusion over the 2016 election, and how he put up with it. Like, he's literally talking to a man leading a nation where tens of thousands of men have been killed on the front line, hundreds of thousands injured, millions moved from their homes, 20% of his land taken. And he's going, and people said bad things about Putin and you don't care. It was the most extraordinary thing. We want to talk today about, basically, ask a question really, what should Keir Starmer do to help Ukraine? Some of you are saying nothing at all. Some of you are saying all the help you can give. But I want to hear from you after that extraordinary exchange between Trump and Zelensky, that heated meeting in the Oval Office on Friday. Bearing in mind the Ukrainian president has said he is still ready to sign a minerals deal with the US, but he confirmed he is prepared also to step down as president in exchange for Ukraine's membership of NATO. But crucially, any deal isn't worth the paper it's printed on if it doesn't offer a guarantee. Can the Europeans offer enough of a guarantee is the question. Plus, it's been revealed that the BBC's most senior news boss watched the controversial Gaza documentary, which was basically narrated by the son of a Hamas official, weeks before it was broadcast. So why was it ever approved, and should heads roll? Love to hear your thoughts on all of that. You can give us a call on 0344 499 1000, text on 87222, or get in touch on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. Sam Armstrong, just before we go to our next very esteemed guest, just your thoughts again, just in terms of what should Keir Starmer do to help Ukraine? Can Britain and Europe protect Ukraine, save Ukraine from further incursion by the Russians without any help from Donald Trump and the Americans? If the Americans literally went, that's it, no more money, no more military aid, we're out. Can the Europeans actually deal with that?
Sure, if they're prepared to pay for it. And look, we've got to be really, really clear. This country basically doesn't have an army anymore. It cannot mount a full combat-ready division and sustain it out there in Ukraine in the long term. That is a disgrace. Yeah. That is a national scandal that has basically gone undiscussed, unmentioned for too long. We can't fill a football stadium with the entire masses, the artillery, the cavalry, the infantry, cannot fill a football stadium that is filled every week. Why? Well, chiefly in this country, it's because we've shoved money out of what was going into defending our country, and we've shoved it into welfare. You want to know why we haven't got 150,000 soldiers? It's because we've got 1 million people sat around on their backsides, not working, getting sicker, because somebody in the job centres thought it was more compassionate to just fork over a load of our money every week to them, to pay for them to sit around moping at home and getting even worse depression. There's no criticism, you know, too much of them. I can accept there's people that are very ill, but the best thing for them to do is to go to work. Instead, we have just been deluded mad, and we have allowed our entire national security apparatus to collapse, as has the entirety of the European continent.
And again, we do have people say, where do you find the money from? Like Rachel Reeves' family. We do have money. Depends what you want to spend it on. Again, like handing Mauritius the Chagos Islands and billing them, or paying them for the benefit. We do have money when we somehow want to. Well, look, let's talk about all of this now with retired Lieutenant General Ben Hodges. He's a former commander of the US Army in Europe. Very good afternoon to you.
Hey, Julia, good to see you again.
Yes, haven't spoken to you for quite some time. I mean, goodness me, if this isn't under your area of expertise, I don't know what is. And, you know, you used to command the US Army in Europe. Can I put the question to you that I just put to Sam Armstrong? Could the Europeans, Britain and France, Germany, I think chiefly, and Poles, could we actually defend Ukraine without American backup?
Yes, of course you can. The combined economies of Europe dwarfs Russia. The combined militaries of Europe dwarfs what Russia can do. But what's lacking, of course, is exactly what Sam described as a lack of political will. Look, I have to say, last Friday was one of the worst days for me in a very long time. It was sickening to watch President Zelensky being treated like a misbehaving school child by the president and vice president of the United States. And it was very, very difficult to watch, although I did watch the analysis all day long. And I think that three things stood out for me from that. Number one, there is no longer any pretense that the administration it clearly sides with Russia. And in your own setup, you described it very well, the way that Trump spoke about what he and Putin had been through together, which was nauseating. So there is no longer any pretense there. The second thing was it's clear that the administration, they have no understanding of the nature of war and why people fight. I mean, when Trump said, you don't have any cards, you've got no cards here, you're gambling with World War III. I mean, there's 5,000 years of military history where armies that were smaller, outnumbered, the other side had all the advantages, and yet the side with superior will won. We lost in Vietnam, we lost in Afghanistan, where clearly we had all the cards except the will part. And then finally, this is a huge strategic mistake for the United States, because our European allies are going to come together. They are going to help Ukraine either win or at least get to a much better situation. And Europe will have done it without us and despite us, and we will have lost great influence and great credibility.
Well, that's interesting you say that at the end, because again, there's an element where, it's a win for the United States if the Europeans step up and start paying for their own defence. And we don't expect American taxpayers in Arizona or Wyoming to be paying for the defence of Britain and France and Estonia. But at the same time, as you say, it does mean, because we're so beholden to the United States, people come a-crawling, and yes, you can meet the king, and we'll do whatever your bidding is. So there is an influence there. I mean, you mentioned a couple of the lines that Donald Trump said. Just for people who just aren't familiar with it, just play a really quick clip of what Donald Trump had to say to Zelensky in the Oval Office on Friday.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. Right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Well, the reality is, of course, Lieutenant General Ben Hodges, is that it's Donald Trump who's gambling with World War III. And I thought it was so telling when Zelensky said, look, I'm not playing cards, I'm the president of a country at war. Hence the outfit. People are getting upset about the outfit. I mean, wow. I mean, he was more upset about the children who've been abducted by Russia, and the mass killings and the rapes and the seizing of his land. In terms of Donald Trump and J.D. Vance and others not understanding the nature of war and the willingness to win, why do you think that Donald Trump doesn't appear to have the urge to win this war against Vladimir Putin on behalf of Ukraine, whereas he does have the will for Israel? He seems to take completely contradictory views of both of those wars.
Well, of course, now you're asking me to do some analysis and a little bit of speculation. There's rampant descriptions on the social media and in the news and in commentary about what motivates Donald Trump. I do believe he's sincere about wanting to stop the fighting. He has a long record of being against endless wars and that sort of thing. So that I take him sincere on that point. The problem for me is that based on what he says and what all the people around him say and do, he really does want to have this sort of a sphere of influence where the United States has a big giant chunk, including apparently Greenland and Canada, as you've already talked about, and the Panama Canal, and that Russia can kind of have their part. And he wants this grand bargain as if this was the 18th century. And I think you know, people, this whole thing, people talk about Ukraine as if it's an island, as opposed to being an important part of Europe. And what is at stake is America's economy, number one, because our prosperity is tied to European prosperity. And as long as there are millions of Ukrainian refugees pouring into Western Europe, that's going to damage all of us economically. And then also China. I mean, China is watching to see, are we serious when we talk about sovereignty, borders, law, et cetera? Right now, I think the Chinese are pretty confident that the administration is not serious about all that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was very interesting. Again, one of the questions was about Taiwan last week, and I can't remember whether it was at Starmer's meeting or it was at Zelensky's. I mean, there's so much happened. And it was extraordinary how Donald Trump was very non-committal in terms of he wouldn't, would you ever allow China to seize Taiwan by force? And he was very non-committal. I mean, if I was Xi Jinping, I'd be like, ah, ha, ha, rubbing my hands in glee. And this is it. This is about the message. And a caller made a point earlier on. I think that's completely right. A lot of the rot started with, Obama, his red line on chemical weapons in Syria. And, that line was crossed. Putin was in there helping President Bashar al-Assad. Nothing happened. No fallout for that. And the message went out: America is no longer the world's policeman. You can do what you want.
Well, it's a very fair criticism. I think you could say that Russia's war in Ukraine is what failed deterrence looks like, because we did nothing after they invaded Georgia in 2008. We did nothing after they jumped over President Obama's red line. We did nothing after they invaded Ukraine in 2014. And no administration ever actually committed to helping Ukraine win. The Biden administration, the previous Trump administration, nobody. And so this is an invitation to Putin and to President Xi and others they're pretty confident that we don't have the political will. Now, that extends to many European countries as well. So at the end of the day, go back to 1942, January 42, when Churchill comes to Washington. He meets FDR in the Arcadia Conference. And in January 1942, there was zero reason to have any optimism. I mean, Great Britain was all alone. The United States did not want to get in a war in Europe.
By the way, this big lie in America, we came to rescue you. You guys didn't come to rescue us. Germany declared war on you. That's the only reason you got involved in the war after Japan had declared.
Just to be clear, that's not my lie.
I know, but it really upsets me. It's like, you didn't come and rescue us. There was nothing.
No, my point is, though, that at a time when there was no reason for optimism, these two guys get together and say, look, we have to defeat Germany first, and then we can turn to Japan. And then 1 year later, they settle on a strategic objective of unconditional surrender. So strategic clarity, priority, end state, at a time when there was no reason for optimism, where we clearly did not have the cards, according to Trump logic. And yet, 3 years later, of course, we know how it turns out. That's what's missing here, is strategic thinking about what is at stake.
Yeah, indeed. And as you say, it's the will. It's not just the ability, it's the will. In terms of what sort of security guarantees Ukraine could get, and again, there's talk of these minerals, this mineral deal. It's gone from being, half a trillion? They've gone way down. It's a big question mark about what rare earth minerals in what quantities Ukraine actually has. But there seems to be this idea that, well, if you accept this deal, A, it's payback to the Americans for money that not given as loans, but given. But also, B, that it's sort of, well, there'll be American companies on the ground, so America will then, they'll have something at stake, and the Russians there won't be an incursion. Again, that's not a security guarantee, is it? What sort of security guarantee would work to deter, if there were a deal and Putin got to keep parts of the Donbass, he got to keep Crimea, what sort of security guarantee could there be from Europe or America that would actually deter him? And is the only thing that would work a NATO membership?
So, and please let me say congratulations to your Prime Minister for organizing the gathering yesterday, that so many leaders turned up for this. And you do get the sense that Europe is taking seriously the threat to Europe.
At long last.
This is not charity for Ukraine. This is about European security and prosperity as well. So that's why everybody is getting serious about it. So congratulations. Now, truly, the only guarantee is NATO membership. Everything else, we've had different things. We've had the Minsk process. We've had the Budapest Memorandum. We've had all these different things where people promised to do stuff and we didn't do it. So NATO is probably the closest thing to an actual guarantee. However, stand fast that I think what we're going to see, anything that we can do to help Ukraine continue to develop its own defense industry will be important. Right now, it makes about 60% of what it actually uses inside Ukraine. So with British, German, American companies investing there, that will contribute a long way. It's also important to remember that this war has been going on 11 years, since 2014. And after 11 years, with Russia having every advantage, they still only control 20% of Ukraine. They've lost 800,000 casualties. The Black Sea Fleet, not even mentioned anymore. The Russian Air Force, huge advantages, has failed to achieve air superiority and has failed to interdict the lines of communication. Two colossal failures. So the only thing the Russians can do is continue to kill innocent people and try to pound away, and it's not working.
Sort of a war of attrition, effectively.
And that's without us actually committing to helping them win.
Yeah.
So imagine if we said, okay, here's everything you need, exactly what UK offered yesterday. These are the kind of things that will allow Ukraine the time to also, they have a lot of hard work to do inside the Ukrainian armed forces to modernize and to reorganize.
Indeed. You mentioned, that the NATO membership, is perhaps the biggest, only real guarantee anymore. Is it even a sure guarantee under Article 5 of NATO that that every other country will come to the aid, all for one for all? Because I think Donald Trump is trying to pull back from that even.
Yeah, this is one of the most worrying things about this whole set of events here in the last weeks. I think when Prime Minister was in the Oval Office and a journalist asked the president, is Article 5, would you still do? And the fact that he even hesitated or waffled slightly is, to me, was, after being a NATO soldier for 40 years myself, was really took the wind out of my sails, because the secret sauce has always been the belief that everybody was committed to this. Now, Article 5 says an armed attack on one shall be considered an armed attack on all. That doesn't mean that everybody has to go rushing to the point of attack, but it's that sort of confidence that the US, UK, France, everybody else would say, yes, of course, this is an armed attack on us. And by the way, this has only been invoked once in the 75 years of NATO. And that was after 9/11, when everybody came to our aid.
Yeah.
So
I just want to double check with JD Vance. Did America thank us for that?
Probably not. Not enough on his scale. And that also, imagine your mother, how we were raised to demand that people thank you for something that actually is in our own interest.
Yeah, absolutely. Can just finally, time is against us. I could talk to you for the whole hour quite happily, Ben. But what do you think's going to happen? You're on the ground. I know you're retired, Lieutenant General, but you have your ear to the ground. You go to all those meetings. You meet people at NATO. You know the people who are making decisions. What do you think is going to happen?
I think that if we can deliver to Ukraine what's needed with some urgency.
We say we?
We, the collective West. All right. By the way, there is still U.S. provided ammunition is still going into Ukraine.
Yeah.
All right. That structure is still there. So I think everybody knows by now that just because President Trump says something at one time does not mean that it is actually going to happen that way. But look, more than 50% of the ammunition that's produced in Europe goes to customers outside of Europe, into Africa and the Middle East. These are political choices. These are the kind of things that could happen quickly. I think that Russia is in deep, deep trouble. They are praying that they get a ceasefire. They are praying that the U.S. will put a halt to its support, because they are in big trouble. And I think as we approach the spring, and then the summer campaign season or better conditions, my money is still on Ukraine.
Really interesting to hear from you. Thank you so much. Great to have your experience, your expertise there. That is retired Lieutenant General Ben Hodges, former commander of the US Army in Europe. Sam Armstrong, listening to all of that, what do you make of it?
I think what shines through is that this crisis, and it is a crisis over the last weekend, isn't a military one. It's not an economic one, right? The military commanders are there saying, look, we can do this. Just like put the money in, they can do it, right? We could put more in. We could give them what they needed. They could make further progress. They could put Russia into a state where it really, really needs to come to the table in a week. This is a political crisis. It is being caused because Donald Trump has come into office and he's rushing to get a deal. Now, look, I want a deal. Don't get me wrong. I want a deal.
No, I don't. I want victory for the Ukrainians and defeat for Russia.
My gut is, in life, there's very rarely total victories one way or the other. But they could get to a much better place. But your issue is, Donald Trump has come in and he's rushing to a deal. And when Democrats did that, when Democrats said, oh no, it's very important we speak politely about Hamas or Iran or whomever, I said, that's disgraceful, call a spade, negotiate strong, etc. Donald Trump is now doing many of the things that that people on our side, and I put myself on the same side broadly of politics, Donald Trump, have rightly criticised our opponents for. It was wrong when they were doing it, and it's wrong when we're doing it, and I'm going to be the guy, and it won't make me many friends, but the guy's consistent on that standard.
Yeah, I just find it extraordinary how he can be such a staunch friend to Israel, but not to Ukraine. 12:23 is the time. Love to hear your thoughts. We're going to get some calls up straight away. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. What do you make of what I've said, Sam said, everyone else has said? Lieutenant General Ben Hodges has said. I mean, he knows his apples. He knows what he's talking about. What do you make of it all? Give us a call. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Just to let you know that Nigel Farage has been speaking today in an interview. He did say that he thought that Zelensky was rude in the Oval Office. I didn't think it was. He said that he was very unwise to tell the Americans what would happen to them if they didn't back him. He wasn't. He was, I think it was an English English issue. But he did say that Zelensky played it very badly. But he said, I wouldn't expect a guest to treat me with I would expect a guest to treat me with respect, not to be rude to me in my own house. But he did also say, I'm not defending what they, meaning Trump and Vance, did. So it's quite interesting, kind of playing both sides there, Nigel Farage, as we probably would expect. We know certainly the Conservatives, Kimmy Badenoch, she made it very clear, front page article in the newspaper yesterday, didn't she, Sam Armstrong, that she feels that we should be backing Ukraine all the way.
Yeah, and in the last few moments, Priti Patel, the Conservative Shadow Foreign Secretary, has put out a statement comparing Nigel Farage's record on Ukraine and Russia to that of Jeremy Corbyn. So it's clear that they see an opportunity at the moment to try and make some political hay out of it. Yeah. And it is a difficult area for Nigel Farage because 70% plus of the British public are very firmly on the side in poll after poll of Zelensky in Ukraine, but his friendship with Donald Trump, I think it's fair to say long-standing views on this issue, place him unusually in a situation in which he is not in full alignment with the British public.
The question is, of course, are the 30% who don't agree with that? Are they the Reform voters? I mean, okay, here's my thing on all these things. I'll tell you what I think. Not what an employer wants me to say. Not what I have no idea what that would be. Not what is it? I'm not influenced by what social media says, not influenced by anything. I read up on a subject, I talk to experts on lots of different sides, I read lots of different views, I take my own view, and it's always my view and only my view. I'm not beholden to anyone on that front, and if anyone told me what to say, I wouldn't do this job. It's as simple as that. So you'll always get my absolute honest truth view, but I mean, I wonder if we're getting that from politicians because everyone's trying to make hay. I just believe, my view is always consistent. I just believe in democracy. I believe in the right and the self-determination and the right of a country not to be invaded by a murderous dictator. I don't know. Call me old-fashioned, Sam. Call me oldfashioned. Let's go straight to the phone lines. 8344 499 1000 is the number to call. Alan has done that. He's in Salford. Hello, Alan.
Hello, Gloria. Good afternoon.
Did you call me Gloria?
Oh, sorry, Gloria.
I love that. I could be a Gloria. I could be a Gloria. Was it because all the holidays? Was that a Gloria Hunniford mention? All the holidays?
No, I don't even like the woman.
What do you want to say, my lovely?
I totally agree with what you just said there. That's my premise. What's happened is the Bulls threw the fence in 2014.
Yeah.
And they should have done something then. I think, to be honest with you, I think it was ridiculous in the White House argument. I think they could have done it in the back without coming out to the out in the front, and showing the world this nonsense. But I've done a bit of research on the cost, total bilateral allocations of Ukraine between January 24th, 2022 and December the 31st. Right, I'll give you a bit of a rundown. United States, this is in billion euros, so it's a European one, this. 114 billion.
Yeah.
EU Commission, now they've put money in, 48 billion.
Yeah.
Germany, 17.
Yeah.
United Kingdom, 14. Japan, 10. Canada, 8. Denmark, and we're getting down to it now.
Okay, so what's your point?
France, 4.9 billion. That's all they've put in.
Yeah.
France. So now you've got Mr. Macron and Mr. Starmer running around like the saviours of Europe. France has put 5 billion in, not even 4 billion.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of the money that the EU is given will be French money because France is a net contributor like Germany. I mean, so I think Europe was very slow, particularly Germany. France is one of the countries that normally actually. I mean, I've got no time for Macron on domestic front, but on international affairs, he's actually, I think, has always been relatively strong. But what's your point? That we should be giving more or less?
The point is Mr. Starmer's running around with Mr. Macron as though they're the top, givers. Well,
it's relative to GDP, isn't it? I mean, you've got to remember, we've been training Ukraine forces since 2014 as well.
Yeah, I understand that. I understand that. There's other things that are not in this, obviously. There's some military aid as well. So, but what I'm saying is, well, he's running around while this country is dying. we're dying.
Well, no, but that's the thing. We're not dying. I mean, you know, our country is on its knees economically. I get that. But we're not dying, and the Ukrainians are dying. Isn't there a priority there?
I didn't mean it that way, Julie. No, I didn't mean it that way.
Yeah.
I understand. And I totally support Ukraine. I've always have done. This Putin's a rat, a total rat, and he needs to be destroyed. But, you know, we're coming to 1st of this month when all these things come in, you know, the last
1st of April, yeah.
You know, things are going to get worse, and we're trying to give billions and billions
we could not give the Chagos Islands away and not pay 18 billion to. That would cover a good whack of it, wouldn't it? We could, as Sam Armstrong keeps saying, we could stop paying people to sit on their backsides not working.
We're renting for something that we own. It's like a landlord giving a house out and paying the rent.
I know. It is utterly bizarre, isn't it? Alan, so appreciate your call. Covered a lot of ground there. Let's go to Aaron, who's in Blackpool. Hello, Aaron.
Hi there, you okay?
Yeah, what do you want to say, my love?
Yeah, so with the altercation with Trump and Zelensky, that's like a huge talk on the radio at the minute. Trump comes across as a complete hypocrite. Now, I want to explain why I think that. So let's just say, right, if the tables turn, let's just say that if an enemy invaded USA, right, and then you had somebody fly over there to talk him down, to say, look, you need to get a deal, Do you really think Trump's going to sit there and go, oh, yeah, I need to do a deal? Or do you think that to do exactly the same as what Zelensky is doing, defending his own country? You know?
Well, exactly. I mean, that's the thing. I don't know why anyone thinks that what is being offered to Zelensky is a realistic deal. I don't even think the word deal is accurate.
The narcissistic behaviour that's coming from Trump is actually quite worrying because... with him being in NATO, you know, USA being in NATO, he should actually be doing his bit as the others. Now, you know, it's an optional thing to fund Ukraine, but we're all doing the thing that we think is right, and all countries are putting in different amounts of money in. But for Trump to say that on air, to threaten to pull out of everything, I just think he's digging himself a little hole here.
Yeah, I think he'll live to regret it. I think, and again, he thinks he's the president of peace. And I mean, let's just say, I mean, you know, Putin doesn't go further while he's still in office, or that Taiwan isn't invaded by China in that time. And he can say, oh, it didn't happen on my watch. But it will. I think it will. Aaron, I really appreciate your call. We've got to go to a quick break now. Aaron in Blackpool, thank you for that. Do keep those calls coming in. 0344 499 1000. 12:34 is the time. We'll take a quick break. Up next, I'm going to talk to Mark Littlewood of the Popular Conservatism Group about the latest madness on trying to deport foreign crooks and migrants, and the mayors in northern France calling on Starmer to visit Calais to see the state of the migrant camps, which they blame him for. Huh? This is Talk, the home of common sense.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Before we go to our next guest, it's time to find out how you could be with a chance of winning £25,000.
Time's running out to get involved in our 25 grand competition. Here at Talk, we're giving you the chance to win this life-changing amount of money for 2025. So what do you need to do to get involved? All you have to do is text the word prize to 83338, or you can enter by post. It's as simple as that, but time is running out. Once again, to get involved, just text the word prize to 83338, or you can enter by post.
18 plus, UK excluding NI. Enter by SMS for £2 plus one standard network charge by 11 p.m. on March the 3rd, 2025. Or send your name, email and contact number to £25,000 cash competition, PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP, to arrive by 5 p.m. on March the 6th, 2025. This is a News Broadcasting Network promotion. Full terms and conditions at talksport.com.
Right, so good luck with that competition. As you said, you've got a little bit of time to get those applications in by post, but today is the last day and lines close at 11 p.m. tonight, so good luck to you. Right now, let's talk about, well, five-days events closer to home, or people coming to our home, and we can't get rid of them, with Mark Littlewood. He's the Director of Popular Conservatism and joins us now. A very good afternoon to you, Mark.
Great to be with you, Julia. Hi.
Thanks for joining us. Again, another story, and it's another week, another story about dealing with foreign criminals who come here, who are put in jail, quite rightly, and then we can't get rid of them. Now, a new plan that jailed foreign criminals in England and Wales will be deported quicker, we're told, after an announcement of a new £5 million immigration unit. It's a task force. Specialist frontline staff will be sent to 80 jails in a bid to remove those with no right to stay, easing the current capacity crisis. They're going to be starting work on April the 1st, and they'll support the Home Office. They can identify, manage those going through the immigration process, and they want to deport criminals up to 18 months before the end of their custodial sentence, and also transferring criminals to serve their time in their own country rather than us paying for it. It all sounds great. Why did no one think of this before?
Well, you're right, Julia. It sounds great insofar as it goes, but the problem is it doesn't go very far. £5 million budget. Yeah. I've just done a quick back-of-the-envelope calculation. That's roughly what we spend on the NHS every 15 minutes, to give you an idea of the quantum of money that's going into this. So I'm not saying it won't do any good, but will it really do substantial good? And look, I'm in favour of us improving the administrative and the enforcement end of this, you know, making sure that people are across the paperwork, who's where, keeping track of people. But
also, why were they not doing that already?
Oh, quite. But the administrative side of it, I think, isn't the bigger part of the problem. It's the legal side of it.
Yeah.
For as long as you are in the European Convention of Human Rights and have the Human Rights Act embedded in UK law, the ability to appeal and stay in the country on the most tenuous grounds. I mean, I think the most preposterous recent case was you can't kick me out because my son likes the flavour of British chicken nuggets, as opposed to, I mean, even on the most tenuous grounds, you have a good case for staying in. And no number of enforcement officers can overcome that if that remains the law. Yeah. So, yeah, hurrah if we're going to improve the administration, which is shaky and rocky and needs improvement. But it's using a sledgehammer to fail to crack a nut if the major problem is the legal question.
Well, I've even thought this, you know, even now you get like Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader, talking about, you know, well, maybe we do need to leave the European Convention on Human Rights. I mean, you know, Robert Jenrick, her rival, has said he'd be willing to do, and certainly the Reform UK want to do. But it seems to me that even if we did that, we've still got the problem of these activist judges and tribunals. I think our whole judicial and legal system is utterly corrupted by this.
No, that's right, because although everybody talks about the European Convention of Human Rights, Julia, it goes well beyond that, because we've decided to write our own Human Rights Act, which is basically a cut and paste of that European Convention, and embed it into English law. Now, I think you're right, we do have a problem with activist judges, but look, what we've told judges that they should now decide is whether somebody's privacy and family life is in any way being impinged upon. Well, that strikes me as a political decision to weigh up somebody's privacy and family life against national security and immigration issues. But we've decided to remove politicians from that and make it a judicial decision. So if you give active political power to judges, don't be surprised when they become activists. We need to take those active powers away.
Who knew? No, we've also learned today that Britain has agreed to extend a deal with France to reduce the small boat crossings until 2027 on condition they complete the construction of a detention centre in Dunkirk. It's a £12.5 million migrant detention centre central to this 3-year deal signed by Rishi Sunak and Emmanuel Macron back in 2023. 600 migrants came across on boats yesterday. You know, we haven't stopped the boats, the gangs haven't been smashed, and now we have the most bizarre scenario where a collection of mayors around Calais, of all these little small towns, they're up in arms about the state of these massive migrant camps where thousands of young, fighting-age men are living rough and waiting basically to get the money together to get on these boats to travel across the Channel. And they've actually demanded that Keir Starmer visits the region to see the impact of this, and is basically saying the problem is we're the problem, because they've got a bunch of migrants living rough who want to get to Britain. I mean, this is a topsy-turvy world, isn't it?
It is. I mean, one area where I've got sympathy with that analysis is it's clear that Britain is a magnet for a large number of illegal immigrants. And if Britain is a magnet and you're trying to get there, don't be surprised that a good number of these people end up in Calais working out how to make their way across the Channel to get to soft-touch Britain. I mean, at first blush, however, it's a French problem. If these people are illegally in France or have no claim to be in France or to remain in France, well, the French should remove them. But of course, where you get a clash of incentives is it's quite convenient for the French if these people make their way across the Channel and become our
But also,
problem.
one of the reasons why they come to Britain is because we offer better benefits and better deals. They're in a hotel, not living in a tent on the Calais beach. I mean, if the French spent more money and looked after them, they'd want to stay in France. I mean, the irony of this is quite bizarre.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, we are a ludicrously soft touch. And going back to speeding up the administration of this, I mean, it takes us, an average of 18 months to process an asylum claim. That's before you start going through any appeals process. I mean, that is extraordinary. This should be taking, maybe not 18 hours, but certainly 18 days, I would have thought, is enough to reach a conclusion about whether the person has some sort of claim. And in order to beat the gangs, I mean, I'll tell you one thing I would be open to is, usually to beat criminal gangs, you have to actually almost compete with them. For example, the National Health Service provides methadone in order to compete with criminal gangs that provide heroin. So I wonder whether we need to set up some sort of safe route and say, look, if you really do think you've got a claim, then, get this flight from Charles de Gaulle Airport or any airport. You'll arrive at this particular airport in Britain. You better have all of your documentation with you, and we will hold you there and process your claim there. We then know if you're trying to cross the English Channel on a dinghy that your claim is not legitimate because you are refusing to take a legitimate route
except, of course, the ones who arrive who claim the legitimate, and we'll never get rid of them either. And of course, we know that perfectly well most of the people who are coming across on the dinghies on the Channel, that they wouldn't be able to go that route, and so that would just carry on. But you say, calling their bluff. Martin Littlewood, Director of Popular Conservatism, and thank you for that. Sam Armstrong, easy to forget we're talking about what's going on in Ukraine and the like. Still got this issue. It's not going away. We talk about it regularly on the station. But here's the interesting thing, of course. If we did basically give Vladimir Putin free rein in Eastern Europe, think how many migrants we'd have then. We saw what happened after Syria.
Yeah, but I've got some sympathy to those people that turn around and say, well, why are you so obsessed about protecting Ukraine's borders when our own country's borders are being violated, invaded each and every day? That they have got a good point. And it all comes back to the fact our politicians are just not serious. They know that they're not going to solve this issue. They know that you cannot solve your border crisis while you're in this, while you're in the ECHR, where you've got the Human Rights Act. Yet will a single one of them ever take that step? No, because it would make them unpopular at dinner parties. No. They are laughing at you in Westminster. Yep. They know what they're doing on purpose. And it is time that this country got serious about the threats that it and across the Western world we are all facing.
Talking of threats, by the way, there's a major major police action taking place in Mannheim in Germany after a car sped through the downtown area of Mannheim, striking and injuring several people, what appears to be a deliberate rampage. More of that cultural enrichment that we hear so much about. Well done. How the German people are putting up with this on a weekly basis, I find absolutely extraordinary. 12:46 is the time. We're going to take a break. Up next, I'm going to talk to the brilliant Brendan O'Neill about that BBC Gaza documentary, which was seen by the most senior figure in BBC News 3 weeks before it went out and was still allowed to go out, despite the fact it was blatant, obvious Hamas propaganda. Do heads need to roll? Does the licence fee need to end? This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
As of all of this nonsense seen in the Mail and various people saying we've got to withdraw the state visit, absolute garbage.
Yeah.
As juvenile stupidity, we should be doubling down.
But wasn't that a bit of a ridiculous move, though, as well?
What we should be doing is, at the end of the day, the British monarchy is probably the most loved around the world. It's our greatest piece of soft power, and we should be using it as much as we can.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense, in sharp contrast to the BBC, which appears to be the home of Hamas these days. Some of the coverage of the Israel-Hamas conflict has been quite extraordinary over the last 18 months or so. And indeed, many of the reporters and many of those involved, the news presenters, the refusal to refer to Hamas as a proscribed terrorist organisation when that is what they are, has shocked us. But nothing quite has shocked us, I think, as much as that documentary that went out, now finally pulled, finally taken off the screens, not going to be shown again, which was purporting to show the life of children in Gaza during the war, and it actually was Hamas propaganda, narrated by a son of a Hamas official. Filmed by a cameraman who had celebrated the October 7th massacre. Well, now we've learned that BBC's most senior news executive, this is Deborah Turness, her job title is Chief Executive of BBC News and Current Affairs. She earns 400 grand a year plus. She is the numero uno when it comes to news and current affairs. She saw that documentary 3 weeks before it went out, and yet it was still allowed to go out. Well, let's talk about this with Brendan O'Neill. He is, of course, chief political writer at Spiked Online and author of After the Pogrom, 7th of October, Israel and the Crisis of Civilization. Good afternoon to you, Brendan.
Hi, Julia.
I mean, the revelations about this documentary have come thick and fast. It's absolutely shocking. How it ever went out on air is shocking. How he spent 400 grand on licence fees, pays money on this documentary, I have no idea how. The fact that a senior exec at the BBC saw this documentary, went, yeah, absolutely fine, tick, put it on air. How shocked are you by that?
I mean, it just gets worse and worse, this documentary. Every single thing you hear about it just makes you think, what is the BBC playing at? As you say, firstly, the fact that it was narrated by the son of a Hamas official. Let's just put that into perspective. Hamas carried out the worst mass murder of Jews since the Holocaust. And the BBC, the public broadcaster, which we are compelled by law to fund, got the son of a man linked to that movement to front a documentary. That's truly sickening. We also know that some of the comments made by the participants were whitewashed by the BBC. Some of the participants in the documentary celebrated jihad against the Jews, but someone at the BBC or someone at the production company changed that to fighting against Israeli forces. So it was mistranslated as well. And
misleadingly. I mean, that's proper disinformation, isn't it? That's a lie.
Yeah. It's fake news. You know, the documentary purports to tell us the truth about Gaza, but in fact, it hid some of the truth about Gaza, which is that there are people there who are anti-Semitic and who do support Hamas, sadly. And now, as you say, we discover that one of the top dogs at the BBC News saw the documentary 3 weeks in advance. They failed catastrophically to do their due diligence on this documentary. And that's really unforgivable because this is such a sensitive topic for lots of people.
And again, surely the point of her seeing it at an earlier screening is to sort of maybe, you know, talk about it, given that the BBC's coverage has been controversial throughout. And again, not just controversial here, BBC is hugely influential overseas. The soft power we often talk about that Britain has, a lot of that comes from the BBC. And when we are seen to effectively, with our national broadcaster, to effectively, I'm sorry, take the side of Hamas, as they've appeared to have done over much of the last 18 months, I think that undermines our power. But I mean, the thing about this documentary, when it was first pointed out, it was David Collier who did a lot of this, done brilliant work on a number of these things, exposing BBC, not just BBC presenters, but sources and a lot of, BBC in Arab journalists, as having been people who had celebrated what happened on October the 7th, when they already darn well knew just what a horrific event that was. They couldn't claim any innocence. They didn't know what had happened. It's just extraordinary. But there was such basic stuff like continuity, like this kid. I mean, this kid who had different, he had his hair, it was long, it was short, different haircuts apparently on the same day, went back to being short again. Wearing 3 different pairs of shoes. One of them was a bright pair of Crocs. I mean, like you would notice, you could really easily, one was flip-flops, one was Crocs, one was trainers, supposedly in the same hour or two. Any editor worth their soul would spot that and go, hold on a minute, I've got some continuity problems here. The cameraman and the editor of this show have claimed that this was taken in one day, this kid's life. It clearly wasn't taken in one day. I need an explanation. Apparently no one bothered asking.
Yeah, and that's the question. Why didn't they ask those questions? Why didn't they do their due diligence? And I think it's because the documentary, in the eyes of the BBC bigwigs, told the correct story. Yeah. And in their view, the correct story, the chattering class narrative that we've seen around this war, is that Israel is evil and Palestine is pure. Israel is the worst state in the world and Gaza is this put-upon, victimized piece of land. That's the narrative. That's the ideology that we've seen coming from the mainstream media. The BBC sacrificed truth at the altar of ideology. That's what it did with this documentary. It sacrificed its commitment to objectivity, which has been waning anyway, and it sacrificed that to telling the supposedly correct story about this very complex war. But, you're right to talk about other instances where we found, or David Collier in his excellent work has found, that there are people at the BBC who've worked for the BBC who cheered 7th of October, who cheered Hamas. To me, this is as bad as if we had discovered in the mid-1930s that there were people working at the BBC who had cheered Kristallnacht or who had cheered some other attack on the Jews. So the BBC has a serious anti-Semitism problem on its hands.
I think it's institutionally anti-Semitic now. I think but it's Jews, so that's okay. If it was institutionally racist against black people, that wouldn't be okay. But Jews, for some reason, don't count. I mean, this is the extraordinary thing. But this is the thing. On the translation issue in particular. Now, okay, I don't speak Arabic. I wouldn't have known what they were saying. But surely somebody working on this documentary news would have been able to say, I don't think that's what those people are saying. Why would you, if you're giving an accurate representation, want to change that? Were the Hamas supporters who filmed this, were they unable to find anyone in Gaza who didn't say horrifically anti-Semitic things about Jewish people?
You know, that's the really interesting question. Why did they change it to make it more palatable? There's one woman in the documentary who celebrates Yahya Sinwar, the Hamas leader who was killed by Israel last year, and she says he fought a jihad against the Jews. Yeah. So he fought a holy war against the Jews. That's what she says. But the documentary changed her to saying that Sinwar fought against Israeli forces. Yeah. So that's incredibly dishonest. I think there's an element here of the racism of low expectations. Yeah. Where it's just nodded along that, these poor Arabs in Gaza, they can't help having these views. We should dress them up. Us sensible, white, liberal people at the BBC, we should disguise them and dress them up and make them sound more palatable. There's a real racial paternalism to that, which I think is deeply unattractive.
Absolutely. I just can't believe that heads shouldn't roll, but I have a funny feeling they won't. Brendan O'Neill, thank you so much for joining us, chief political writer at Spiked Online. Sam Armstrong?
Yeah, jihad's one of those magic words, isn't it? That
could mean anything.
It never quite means what it blatantly, obviously meant at the time.
When they say Jews, they mean Jews.
Quite right. So, and look, around the world, we saw this with Putin. He was called out and he was saying these things. He was saying he wants to invade. People saying, oh, don't take it too seriously. Yeah. President Xi, he says he wants to invade Taiwan. Yeah. Don't listen to him. The members of Hamas say, yes, we want to kill each and every Jew we can possibly get our hands on as quickly and inhumanely as possibly. They don't mean it. Yes, they do. When your enemy tells you who they are, listen to what they're saying and respond accordingly.
Yeah, absolutely. It is it's just extraordinary. I mean, I do not know how any of the people involved in this can still be in a job by the end of the week. I really don't. But there we are. But, Ofcom police us, but they don't really police the BBC. They're a law to themselves. Sam Armstrong, thank you very much. Delighted to be joined by Ian Collins right now.
Hello.
What are you talking about today?
Well,
not much around, obviously.
It's a bit quiet out there. I was looking around, and often if you can't find anything domestically, you look for international stuff. Nothing on the agenda, there's nothing really sort of look into. It is tumbleweed moment, but we managed to pull out a story, a bit of an exclusive, of an incident that happened in the Oval Office on Friday.
Oh, I've been hearing about this.
Yeah, it was a bit
It is extraordinary, isn't it? I've never seen anything
bit of a
like
shout
it.
up. I mean, I know
never
everybody's...
seen